6. Please state your name and which item you'd like to speak on. Hi, good morning.
I think you're asking Edward Wallace. This is Edward Wallace, and I will speak on item number 2.
Okay, Edward, and you're not part of the Transito group?
I represent J.C. Deco.
I
represent J.C. Deco along with Ellen Berkowitz, and my understanding was we would sort of present together efficiently, if that works for the commission.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, since it sounds like you're on video on one line and audio through a different line, I'm going to keep this audio line open for you, and then just to mute and unmute the *6 command code would be very helpful. I'm going to lower your hand at this time, but again, to mute *6, to unmute *6. Great, thank you very much, appreciate it.
And Dr. Campos, this is Ted. The folks from Outfront Deco, as well as Transito Vector, representatives and legal counsel, they'll be given additional time, and President Garcia will address that in the meeting.
Great, and I believe they have the Zoom links that are already part of the panelists, is my understanding. However, I will go through an identification process before we get started, just in case some of them are calling in that are not panelists at this time.
Okay.
Thank you, Ted. Again, this is for members of the general public that would like to provide general public comment or commentary on items 1, 3, 4, and 5 at this time. If you can keep your hands raised, we do have 2 hands raised at this time. We're just going to identify you, and then after that, we will identify the Transito group and also the J.C. Deco group as well. Bart Reed, if you can unmute your microphone, if you can please let us know which item you'd like to speak on. Bart Reed, R-E-E-D. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time. Hi, Bart.
I'm trying to speak in favor of the Transito Victor shelter proposal, but I'm driving on the freeway and my phone is not behaving. So
that's okay. That's item number 2. That's item number. That's item number 2. Once the president calls item number 2, we will ask those that would like to speak on item number 2 to raise their hand at that time.
Okay, can you mute me because I can't touch my phone?
I will. I'm going to go ahead and unmute. I'm going to go ahead and mute you and also lower your hand. Again, this is just for general public comment. We are trying to get started. Actually, we're 1 minute behind schedule. We'll go through the last caller that has raised their hand for general public comment or commentary on items 1, 3, 4, and 5. Beth Halden Garland, if you can please unmute your microphone. Please let us know which item you'd like to speak on.
Hello. I was just notified of this meeting literally maybe 10 minutes ago. I'm in the middle of this.
Which item would you like to speak on?
So the staff bus stop.
Item number 2, yes. For item number 2, for staff, we will take those public comments. Once the item is called into the record, we will ask those that want to speak on the item to raise their hand at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand, Beth, and I'm also going to mute you at this time. Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are about 2 minutes behind schedule. However, we do have all the presenters on the line. We also have all the audio in line as well. Commissioners, if you can please turn on your video cams. We'd like to go ahead and spotlight you. Commissioner Villegas, you should receive that invitation to join us. It should be going through any minute at this time. Also, if you are part of the Transito group and do not have the panelist queue or are not currently in the Zoom call as a panelist, if you can please raise your hand at this time. Again, if you are joining us as an attendee, not as a panelist, and you are part of the Transito group, if you can please raise your hand, I'd like to make sure that we add you as a panelist at this time. Seeing no hands raised from the Transito group, we'll go on to the next group. Oh. 090, 090, that's your audio line. We have you. Thank you. You can lower your hand. JC Deco, if you are part of the JC Deco team and are joining us as an attendee, not as a panelist at this time, if you can please raise your hand, I'd like to make sure that you are part of the group with the panel. Ellen Berkowitz, thank you so much for raising your hand. If you can please unmute your microphone. Ellen, you're part of the JC Deco team?
I'm part of the Upfront Deco team.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. You're part of the JC Deco team?
Yes, I'm part of the Outfront Deco team. Shall I turn off my phone?
No, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and add you to as a panelist so that when your group is able to speak, then you will be part of the panel as well. Thank you, Ellen. You should receive that invitation to join us as a panelist in about 5 to 10 seconds. Once you receive it, if you can just accept that invitation, and you should be able to join the rest of the team. Caesar, the same thing. Caesar Estrada, if you can unmute your microphone. Are you part of the JC Deco team? Caesar Estrada, you have your hand raised. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time, can you please confirm you are part of the JC Deco team? Last call for Caesar Estrada.
No, I'm not. I'm with the All American War Veterans.
Okay, and Caesar, would you like to speak under general public comment, or you have your hand raised?
Just public comment.
Under general public comment? Not item
Yeah.
number 2?
Item 2.
Item 2 is the staff. Yeah, we're not taking, at this time, once the president calls item number 2, we will have those individuals that would like to speak to raise their hand at that time.
2022.
Got it.
Thank you. Great, let's go ahead and get started. Commissioners, I apologize for the delay. We were supposed to start at 10:10 at the latest. Commissioners, if you can please, Edward, you have your hand raised. Did you need anything? Edward? You would have to press *6 to unmute your audio line.
Yeah, no, am I unmuted?
Yes, you have your hand raised.
I only wanted to make sure you connected the dots that Ellen Berkowitz and I are here for Outfront Deco.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take my hands down, sorry.
Yes, and Ellen is part of the panel as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioners, my apologies for starting a little late. I'm going to go ahead and start spotlighting you for everyone. And we'll start with Commissioner Reyes. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
President Pro Tem Davis, good morning to you.
Good morning,
Audio
Dr.
line.
Campos.
Good morning. Apologies for starting a little behind schedule.
Okay.
And change your name. President
thank
Garcia, good morning to you. And
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, President.
good morning, VP Villegas.
Davis, Commissioner Villegas, Commissioner Reyes. Good morning.
Morning,
and
everyone.
I know Commissioner Corson is here.
You did get that report, President, didn't you, that I emailed to you? The report. Okay, great. Thank you.
You took your check out.
Commissioner Corzan, if you're on the line, I'm trying to go through this quickly. Oh, there you are. Commissioner Corzan, once you enter the call, if you can just turn on your video cam, we'll go ahead and spotlight you for everyone. There you are. And Jacob, or good morning to you, Commissioner Corzan, if you want to test your audio line.
Good morning.
Good morning, we can hear you loud and clear. Perfect.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry to interrupt, Dr. Campos. I did get an email from one of the legal counsel for the Transito Vector team. I'm not sure if he's been admitted yet. He sent me an email saying that he wasn't admitted. It's Attorney Randy Keene.
Did Randy raise his hand or her hand?
not sure. I'm just seeing the email now. I apologize for raising it now.
Is it R-A-N-D-I or D-Y?
No, all right, Randall Keene. Keene is K-E-E-N. He's one of the attorneys from Manat, along with Jacob.
I do not see a Keen on the line.
Okay.
There was a Manat attorney on the line though earlier.
Yeah, that's a different attorney.
Okay.
So I'll see if I can get a hold of him. I think I have a phone number.
Yeah, I don't have that. I did
Okay.
make a call for all the team members of those two teams.
No, I understand.
JC DeCo, so if they do join
Jacob
us.
raised, Jacob is Randy's, one of his colleagues, and he's raising his hand. Jacob Itzkowitz.
Yes, I do have two Jacobs on the line, one with their hand raised and one with the video
Okay.
cam. So Jacob, you have your hand raised?
The one with the hand raised must be Randy's. I think we're on the same link.
Oh, okay.
Randy, is that you? You have your hand raised. Do you want to turn on your video cam?
Oh, we're all good. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you guys.
Okay. And Randy, you can also change your name if you'd like on your end so that we have two clear names on the queue.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. And you can change your name by clicking on your picture. There's three little dots on the upper right-hand side of your picture frame. You can click on that and just rename, and then that should allow you to do that. President Garcia, I believe we're finally ready. Apologies for the delay, 10 minutes behind, just trying to get
No.
everyone
Oh,
in
yeah.
line for item number 2.
Okay, I'm ready when you're ready.
Perfect. Let me go ahead and start the audio recording for you. President Garcia, you are now in record mode.
Great, thank you very much. All right, colleagues, we're going to get started now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting for the Board of Public Works for Wednesday, August 17, 2022. Dr. Campos?
Good morning, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer, establishing roll call and quorum this morning. We have President Garcia, Vice President Villegas, President Pro Tem Davis, and Commissioners Corzan and Reyes. President Garcia, you do have a quorum at this time. President Garcia, we do not have any callers on the line at this time for general public comment. We may have callers, we do have callers for item number 2. We don't have the number, but we will call that at the time that you call the item number 2 for the record. At this time, we have no commentary from the Neighborhood Council commentary as well. And Commissioner, President Garcia, we did receive 160 emails that will be sent out to all commissioners regarding item number 2. In addition to that, we did receive 5 Google comments received for item number 2 as well. So again, 160 emails plus 5 comments. Those will be packaged and sent to all commissioners in the next couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you for that. Confirmed. Given that we don't have anybody at general public comment is now officially closed. We are going to move on to the first item of today's business. And before I do that, colleagues, we are going to go a little bit out of order today. I know that there's many folks here for item number 2, but to the public here today, I just want to let you know, we do have other city business to take care of, so we're going to handle that city business first, so we can allow our staff to go back to their regular schedules, and then we will take item number 2, the last item for today. I hope that is okay with everyone, including commissioners. I'm not seeing any objections. Thank you very much. Moving on to the approval of the minutes of Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. Is there a second to my motion to move this item forward and forthwith?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Dr. Campos, there's a first by me and a second by Dr. Davis to move the approval of the minutes forward and forthwith.
Let's go ahead and start the voting tabulation now. We'll start with President Garcia,
Aye.
Vice President Villegas,
Aye.
President Pro Tem Davis,
Davis, aye.
Commissioner Corzan,
Aye.
and Commissioner Reyes.
Aye.
This motion is adopted and carries unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campos. Moving on to item number 1, we have bids coming in this morning. These are bids received today at 10 a.m. Bids will be received for the following public works projects: Council District 15 at 116th Tiny Home Village and parking improvements, work order E1908877, estimate of $2,704,025 at in-council District 15. That's project number 1. Project number 2 is Walk, Bike, Watts. That's a little hard to say. Walk, Bike, Watts. Transformative Climate Communities Project, work order E1908903 for an estimate amount of $1,635,046 in council districts 8 and 15. Dr. Campos?
Good morning, Commissioners. Again, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. We will open up the bids now. We do have 2 projects as read into the record by President Garcia. I am joined in my office now with Mr. Matthew Castellano, and we'll go ahead and start to open up the bids for the first project. Again, this is in CD15, the 116th Street Tiny Home Village and Parking Improvements Project. We did receive 2 bids for this first project. First bid received for the first project is from CS Legacy Construction Incorporated for a total bid amount of $2,224,830 even. That's 2224830 from CS Legacy Construction Incorporated. The second and final bid received for the first project is from Access Pacific Incorporated for a total bid amount of $2,278,512.10. That is 2278512.10 from Access Pacific Incorporated. For the record, line item number 17 has the use of whiteout. However, it's not crossed out, but it is initialed by the contractor. Again, item number 17 is initialed by the contractor, but the use of whiteout has been used. That line item for the record is $96,000 even. That's for line item 17 with a total bid amount of 2278512.10 from Access Pacific Incorporated. President Garcia and Commissioners, that concludes the bid openings for the first project. We'll go ahead and start the opening of the bid for the second project. The second project is the Walk, Bike, Watts Transformative Climate Communities Project in Council Districts 8 and 15. For this project, we did receive 3 bids for the second project. The first bid received for the second project is from Crosstown Electrical and Data Incorporated for a total bid amount of $3,022,983 even. That's 3022983 from Crosstown Electrical and Data Incorporated. The second bid for the second project received is from Baker Electric and Renewables LLC for a total bid amount of $2,751,394 even. That's 2751394 from Baker Electric and Renewables LLC. For the record, line item number 1, 2, 3, 4, and the total bid amount have been crossed out by the contractor and all lines have been initialed. Again, this is from Baker Electric and Renewables LLC. The third and final bid received for the second project is from KDC Incorporated for a total bid amount of $2,008,000 even. That's 2008000 from KDC Incorporated. President Garcia and Commissioners, that concludes the bid openings for the second project. That also concludes all bids for today's agenda as well. We will need a motion to receive, open, and declare these bids.
So move.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Commissioner Reyes. Commissioner Reyes, is there a second to receive, open, and declare today's bids?
It was VP Villegas who made the motion.
It was Vice President Villegas. Sorry about that. Vice President Villegas, is there a second to Vice President Villegas to?
I second that.
Commissioner Reyes, got it. All right, Dr. Campos, we have a motion on the table to receive, open, and declare today's both bids by Vice President Villegas and second by Commissioner Reyes.
Absolutely. We'll go ahead and start the voting tabulation now. We'll start with you, President Garcia.
Aye.
Vice President Villegas.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Davis.
Davis, aye.
Commissioner Corzan.
Aye.
And Commissioner Reyes.
Aye.
This motion is adopted and carries unanimous. Thank you.
thank you, Dr. Campos, and thank you to Mr. Castellanos. I'm sure he was back there doing the hard job. All right, moving us on to item number 3 on today's agenda. This is an AFP for ASTM International. Bureau of Engineering and the Office of Accounting are requesting board approval and execution of an authority for expenditure in the amount of $28,300 to encumber funds for advance payment of renewal subscription for on-site license and online services and products for the period of September 1st, 2022 to September 1st, 2023. And who do we have here today for this item?
My name is Gina. Good morning.
Hi, Gina. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm the acting senior civil engineer in the Bureau of Engineering, and the authorization for expenditure has to do with securing our annual renewal for our American Society for Testing and Materials, and this is the ASTM Standard Services Contract. The annual cost for this year is $28,300 for a 12-month term starting September 1st, 2022 and ending on September 1st, 2023. Our funding is going to be coming from our sewer and construction and maintenance funds. As a brief background, ASTM Standards is an online service and it allows access to a suite of standards and technical practice write-ups which are used by the Bureau of Engineering staff. The online service is primarily in the design phase, but we also use them in parts of our construction phase projects. And the references are used to conduct research requested by other bureaus or departments, as well as approval for various non-standard materials and products. Lastly, one of our quality control activities that we do each year is to evaluate the usage of the standards and codes included in the contract to see whether some of these standards have to be dropped while some relevant documents needed to be added. So in doing so, we will keep the cost of the service at a reasonable level and keep the available documents relevant. If there's any questions, I can be happy to answer them for you, and thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Knight, for that. And Mr. Irvine, good morning as well. Are you here for questions or for any added context?
President Garcia, I'm here to support Gina. So.
Got it. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions on this item? Seeing none, any objections? Seeing none either. Is there a motion on the table to move item number 3 forward and forthwith?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice President Villegas. Dr. Campos, we have a first by Dr. Davis and a second by Commissioner Villegas to move item number 3 forward and forthwith.
Absolutely. We'll start the voting tabulation now. We'll start with you, President Garcia.
Aye.
Vice President Villegas.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Davis.
Davis, aye.
Commissioner Corzan.
Aye.
And Commissioner Reyes.
Aye.
This motion is adopted and carries unanimous. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Nye and Mr. Irvine. Have a good rest of the week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, colleagues, moving on to the administrative items for today. We do not have presenters on both 4 and 5, so I'll read them into the record and we'll receive and file the following items. This is in Council District number 8. The mayor has approved and authorized the Board of Public Works on behalf of the Bureau of Street Services and the Bureau of Contract Administration to execute the personnel services contract with Redeemer Community Partnership for the Normandy Beautiful Project. Is there a second to my motion to accept?
So moved.
Second. I'll take that as a second. Thank you. Dr. Campos, did I miss anything on this item?
Nope, that's it. We'll go ahead and start the voting tabulation. We'll start with you, President Garcia.
Aye.
Vice President Villegas.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Davis.
Davis, aye.
Commissioner Corzan.
Aye.
And Commissioner Reyes.
Aye.
This motion is adopted and carries unanimous.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, moving on to item number 5. This is in all council districts. The mayor has approved and authorized the Board of Public Works on behalf of the Bureau of Engineering and the Bureau of Street Services to execute the proposed contract with the University of California at Los Angeles for a study of City Hillside Street. Is there a second to my motion to accept this item?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Dr. Campos, there's a first by me and a second by Dr. Davis to move forward item number 5, forward and forthwith.
Absolutely. We'll start the voting tabulation now. We'll start with you, President Garcia,
Aye.
Vice President Villegas,
Aye.
President Pro Tem Davis,
Davis, aye.
Commissioner Corzan,
Aye.
and Commissioner Reyes.
Aye.
This motion is adopted and carries unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Campos. All right, colleagues, looks like we have finished all of our city businesses. Thank you all that were here for those items. Have a good rest of the week. We will now move on to item number 2, which is what I believe most of our attendants are here for. I will read the item into the record, then we will take public comment. So colleagues, as you know or very well aware, we have a pretty big item on today's agenda where we have a couple callers and we received many public comment through via email and all of our inboxes, including the ones that Dr. Campos sent to us. I hope everybody's had a chance to read all of them, but I want to just kind of set the stage of what we're going to do here for the next, for item number 2. I'm going to read the item into the record. I'm going to take public comment after that, and then we are going to give an opportunity to Bureau of Street Service to let us know where we're at, why we are here today, and why this contract is back on our board. We also have an official protest from Outfront Depot that has been sent out to each and one of you, and we will give also Mr. Depot's party time to speak, and we'll also have time for Transito to also speak, since these are the 2 contracts in questions today. I'll move forward with reading this into the record and move into public comment. Then we will set the stage around that. Mr. Jordan, is there something you would like to add at this time?
Yeah, just to clarify what's before the board and what isn't before the board, because I recognize we're in a little bit more unusual posture. The boards, as you said, we are reconsidering the award of a contract matter that has already been before the board. I believe it was May 11th. But this is essentially reconsideration. It's an entirely fresh review of the award of the contract. So you're not bound in any way by the prior hearing. Certain matters were brought to our attention by Outfront Deco regarding what access to materials they had when the hearing was held in May 11th. Materials relating to the RFP process that resulted in the contract recommendation. In addition to the CAO, as part of its customary review of the contract, has actually recommended some changes. And so the contract before you is not the same. If there have been some changes, and staff can go over what those are. And so to wrap all of that up, it's a fresh review of the award of the contract. The contract has been revised slightly, and again, we can get into the details of that. So that's kind of what's before you. Now, there's a minor difference between the wording of this, between the agenda and the Street Services report. I believe the Street Services report uses the word reconsider, and the agenda uses the word review. It's really the same thing, and I think with my clarification, I hope that's now more clear. I'm happy to answer any questions about that if you'd like. So what's not before the board? What's not before the board are the other items that were previously considered and acted on May 11th. There were a number of different items on that May 11th hearing relating to staffing and, more importantly, relating to CEQA, the approval and recommendation to the City Council to adopt a mitigated negative declaration for this project. The CEQA piece is not before the board again. The City Council now is the decision maker of that, although I expect we'll get some comments on that, and that it's perfectly appropriate for those comments to come before the board. However, the board is no longer the decision maker on the MND. That item is now before the City Council and will be acted on when the council chooses to. So what's before the board is the reconsideration of the award of a contract for this project. The contract has been revised a little bit, so it's a bit different, and we can talk about how it's different. What's not before the board is the consideration of the MND. That's now before the city council, and the agenda difference in wording, I believe I've clarified that for you. So sorry to be so long-winded, but it's not every day we reconsider the award of a contract, so I just wanted to make everybody clear on that. And I'm happy to answer any more questions if you'd like.
Great, thank you for that, Mr. Jordan. I will now read the item into the record, and then we will take public comment on this item. This is an item for the Bureau of Street Services, item number 2 in all council districts, revised contract, Transito Vector LLC, Sidewalk and Transit Amenities Program staff. Recommending the board to 1, review and approve the revised contract for the staff with Transito Vector LLC, previously approved by the Board of Public Works on May 11, 2022. And 2, authorize the president or 2 members of the Board of Public Works to execute the revised contract with Transito Vector LLC upon approval by the Los Angeles City Council and Mayor's Office. Those are the 2 items we have before us, Commissioners. I will now take any public comment. Dr. Campos.
Thank you, President Garcia. Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. For those members of the general public that would like to provide public comment on item number 2, this is the staff program reconsideration item. If you can please raise your hand at this time if you'd like to speak on item number 2. Again, this is for members of the general public that would like to provide commentary on item number 2. If you can please raise your hand at this time by pressing star 9 if you're calling in through a landline or smartphone device, or if you're joining us through the Zoom application, there is a raise hand icon located towards the lower right-hand side of your screen. Again, this is for item number 2. The Board of Public Works is now considering item number 2. If you can please raise your hand at this time if you'd like to provide public comment on item number 2 by pressing star 9 or clicking the raise hand icon.
Thank you, Dr.
President
Campos.
Garcia. Oh, apologies. President Garcia, we have 19 callers on the line that have raised their hand for item number 2. Again, last call. If you'd like to speak on item number 2, if you can please raise your hand by pressing star 9 or click the raise hand icon if you're joining us through the Zoom application. President Garcia, we did get a few more that raised their hand for the last call. Again, last call. We will close it out at 22 at this time, President Garcia. 22 callers on the line.
Okay, given that we have 22 callers on the line, we will take our regular public comment time. So everybody will have 2 minutes to speak, just like our normal meetings.
Great. President Garcia, we did have 1 caller that raised their hand after we closed it out. Would it be okay to add them or drop them?
We're gonna do it just 1 accepted, and that's it. 23.
23.
We're done at 23.
Okay, perfect. We will go ahead and tally that up, and we'll go ahead and start with the first caller. Again, 2 minutes for each caller. We'll start with the first caller on the line. It's BRYN, Bryn Lindblad. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time. And Bryn, I apologize if I mispronounced your last name.
That was great pronunciation. Thank you. Good morning. This is Bryn Lindblad, Deputy Director of Climate Resolve. We're a local nonprofit committed to developing equitable solutions to climate change. And I'm calling this morning mostly to emphasize really the tremendous importance of delivering shade and heat equity to Angelenos, and want to offer support for the STAP program and give kudos to the Streets LA staff that have designed a really well-structured program that's designed to ensure that we're really getting shade structures installed at bus stops where they're needed most within the next 5 years. With extreme heat days on the rise, it's truly a matter of life and death. People die every year from heat exposure, and it can have numerous other negative consequences, such as on student learning, etc. And so it's really essential that these new bus shelters get installed in the very near future. I would also like to give a little bit of kudos to Transito Vector. They've agreed in response to some of our advocacy to not allow fossil fuel industry ads on the bus shelters. I think that's a great step forward. Our bus infrastructure shouldn't be sort of undermining our solutions to climate change, and hoping they'll go even further and agree yet to not host non-EV car ads on those shelters as well. We've also seen a willingness to try innovative approaches, such as pilots with smog-absorbing material coatings and passive radiative cooling films to really deliver some temperature heat relief under those shade structures and hydration stations as well. I'm really excited about the opportunity to use public service announcements on these bus shelters and hope that the city can do some good public outreach campaigns to advise public on how to protect their health on bad air and extreme heat days. So see some promise in the digital displays for that purposes, for protecting public health. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryn. We'll move on to the next caller on the line, Pamela. There is no last name, Pamela. If you can unmute your microphone, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak on item number 2. Pamela.
Hello, hi, thank you. So my name is Pamela, and I am excited about this new bus shelter program because I believe we need to make smart and fiscally responsible investments in our transit infrastructure. I am disappointed, though, that people who do not ride the bus or care about bus riders are against the program because of advertising. It's a win for taxpayers and honestly a huge win for bus riders who have no shade with temperatures rising. So just ask that you please invest in our city's best bus shelters to improve our mass transit infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. We'll move on to the next caller, Dalia Velasco, D-A-L-I-A, Velasco. Please go ahead. Please unmute your microphone. You'll have 2 minutes to speak on this item.
Good morning, members of the Public Works Board. My name is Dalia Velasco, and I'm the Policy Coordinator at Alliance for a Better Community. ABC works to advance social, economic, racial equity, and justice for the Latino and Latina community and the Los Angeles region. Today, I'm calling in to support Street LA's vision of the Sidewalk and Transit Amenities Program, which would provide much-needed bus shelters. I'd like to share a few critical points for this board to consider as they weigh their decision. The City of Los Angeles needs bus shelters. This contract will provide 3,000 bus stops and 450 shade structures. 75% of bus riders in every district will get new shelters. 100% of bus stops will have real-time departure data and city information. And 10 to 15% of all advertising space is devoted to city and community messaging. Furthermore, ABC believes this project will offer opportunities to local communities by expanding shelters to do the following: act as a reliable point of internet connectivity, aiding in closing the digital divide, and also be used to promote static and electronic ads, PSAs, messages from local nonprofits, and also used to promote local small businesses. We urge this board to ensure that bus stops be installed in a manner that distributes the most robust shelters in low-income, high ridership areas, as well as work to ensure community residents and CVOs are engaged on this issue by creating an advisory group. ABC has a strong network of more than 600 parents and community members in LA County, and the vast majority do not own vehicles. Currently, 75% of Metro's customers are Latino or African American, with the average median household income for bus riders only $17,975. Most bus shelters lack basic amenities like shade, seating, or real-time route information. We urge you to approve this contract so we can get closer to the transportation system, more equitable and safe for all riders. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalia. We'll go ahead and move on to the next caller on the line, Cindy Soto, C-Y-N-D-E Soto. If you can please unmute your microphone, you'll have 2 minutes to speak on item number 2. Please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Soto. I'm from the Aging and Disability Transportation Network, which is comprised of organizations and agencies serving older adults and people with disabilities. I myself am over the age of 65, and I have chronic health conditions, which prevents me from going out in the direct sun for any length of time, just like tens of thousands of other LA residents. Older adults as well as children can experience heat-related health problems when shade is unavailable. The amenities that these shelters will provide will be a welcome addition for the health and safety of bus riders and should increase ridership. Do not delay. Approve the contract of Transito Vector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. We'll move on to the next caller on the line. Caller by the name of Transform Video 2. Transform Video 2. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time, you'll have 2 minutes to speak on this item.
Hi there, my name is Amy Thompson. I'm a transportation policy analyst for Transform. We focus on walkable, accessible communities in California with excellent transportation options. I'm here to echo the comments of fellow advocates on the line, such as Climate Resolve. We are in strong support of LA putting together this program, giving shade and improved transit infrastructure for transit riders. Transit should really be the most comfortable and affordable option if we stand to survive the climate crisis. We support awarding this contract to Transito Vector, and thank you very much to everyone on the line putting the contract together.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next caller on the line. Caller by the name of Paige, P-A-I-G-E. Paige, if you can please unmute your microphone, you'll have 2 minutes to speak on item number 2.
Hi, my name is Paige, and I'm currently a resident of the Los Angeles area, and I'm calling because I support a greener and cleaner Los Angeles, and there's just simply no way we can reduce our greenhouse gases if we don't improve our bus system, and this system starts with all the shelters. I just don't want you to be able to call yourself an environmentalist if you don't support improving our bus shelters. This is a great program that will directly improve the lives of hundreds and thousands of people every day who rides buses, so I just believe these should be in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paige. We'll move on to the next caller. Caller by the name of Elizabeth, no last name. Elizabeth, if you can please unmute your microphone, joining us through the Zoom app.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for addressing the concerns of us bus riders. I can't begin to explain how important this real-time bus information will be to us riders. Right now, you just show up and you pray that your bus is on time or that it hasn't been canceled. This real-time bus information on these shelters will help better trip plans and let me know if I have some extra time to grab a coffee or something before my bus arrives. This seems super silly if you don't ride the bus, but it could be a huge game changer. Please pass this program and let's start getting these bus shelters built.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll go ahead and move forward with the next caller on the line, Michael Shilstone, S-H-I-L-S-T-O-N-E. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time, you will have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Michael Shilstone with Central City Association. We're pleased that the city is taking a thoughtful and comprehensive approach to the new street furniture contract, and we're supportive of this new program. Downtown is the region's walkable, multimodal transit hub, and downtown's residents and workers disproportionately use public transit. This program will provide increased safety and comfort for those transit riders and improve our public realm overall. The smart and unique funding model will allow us to achieve and sustain these public benefits at no cost to the city as well. We appreciate that 10 to 15% of all advertising space will be devoted to city and community messaging, and that the Streets LA and Transito Vector teams have been willing partners to help implement a new modern wayfinding system as part of this effort. This is an exciting and dynamic program that has the potential to greatly improve mobility and our public spaces. We look forward to its implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We'll move forward with the next caller on the line. Marion Dodge, D-O-D-G-E. Marion Dodge, if you can please unmute your microphone at this time, you'll have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2. Please go ahead.
I'm Marion Dodge with Scenic Los Angeles. When I submitted a comment regarding staff, I was surprised to receive an immediate robo-response from the mayor's office saying he supports staff. The mayor started a Vision Zero initiative to reduce traffic deaths to zero. Yet study after study throughout the world have shown that intersections with flashing digital billboards have a marked increase in accidents. The mayor also supports a beautiful Los Angeles, but statistics show that homes located near billboards have decreased property value. The Los Angeles has a ban on billboards outside of designated sign districts, but staff would bring digital billboards into every neighborhood. The Board of Public Works has not received enough information in order to make an intelligent decision. You have not been shown the side-by-side comparison of the two bids. You have not even seen revised contract. Your decision should be an informed decision. Yes, the public needs benches at bus stops, and they definitely need shade. What they don't need is advertising. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. We'll move on to the next caller. A caller by the name of Carrie Madden, M-A-D-D-E-N. Carrie, if you're on the line, if you can please unmute your microphone. You'll have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2. Please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Madden, and I'm with CalLife Independent Living Center in downtown Los Angeles. Many people with disabilities use buses for all their transportation needs. I am one such rider. I'm a power wheelchair user who lives in Chatsworth, who works in downtown Los Angeles. Many days during the summer, it hits 100 degrees. Many stops have no shelters. I'm stuck in the direct sun. After a while, I start feeling dizzy and overheated. I have to make a choice, stay and risk getting sicker, or do I roll down the street looking for shade and a cold drink? If I miss my bus, it could take another 45 minutes until the next one arrives. It's an awful choice to make. Risking my health shouldn't be a necessary part of riding a bus. I ask you please to move forward on these bus shelters with real-time bus scheduling information. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. We'll move on to the next caller. Caller ending in 418. Caller ending in 418, area code 213. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time by pressing *6. Again, this is for caller ending in 418, area code 213. If you can please unmute your microphone by pressing *6. Thank you very much. You'll have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning, board members. My name is Doug Arsenault. I'm a Transportation Equity Fellow specializing in transportation technology and infrastructure. I strongly support the Streets LA contract with Transito Vector. My research has found that Los Angeles is far behind other major cities in people-focused transportation infrastructure. Angelenos have suffered under the belabored current contract that deprives travelers, primarily Black, Indigenous, and people of color, of dignity while waiting for the bus. By installing 3,000 bus shelters and 450 shade structures across all districts, Transito will support the city in finally delivering on its equity promises. The Transito contract will also lay the foundation for the development of mobility hubs, a long-sold concept that originated here in LA but has blossomed around the country. Transito has a proven track record of implementing these hub elements that will empower Angelenos to choose the best transportation mode for them and access life-sustaining goods and services without the burden of relying on a car. This contract will finally move the mobility hub concept forward through purposeful, equitable distributions of shelters, shades, real-time bus arrival information screens, and safety elements. I urge the board to approve the contract without any further delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We'll move on to the next caller on the line. Kevin Shin, S-H-I-N, Kevin Shin. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time, you'll have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kevin Shin, and I am the Deputy Director of the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. Our organization represents tens of thousands of cyclists across the county, many that use their bikes to serve as first last mile connections to public transit to cover greater distances. A large portion of those cyclists are in low-income communities where currently bus stops are little more than a sign. It is because of the experience of these cyclists, as well as the hundreds of thousands of bus riders from low-income communities with bus stops that have no seating or shade, that we support the city contracting with a company like Transito Vector to provide as many as 3,000 bus shelters and 450 shade structures for these community members. This new infrastructure, which is designed to incorporate real-time departure data and greater comfort for riders, will not only make conditions more comfortable for existing riders, but will encourage more Angelenos to consider taking public transit. As LA tries to tackle its increasingly challenging traffic congestion issue, any steps that we can take to encourage more folks to ride public transit will have important impacts on reducing congestion, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and making LA a more livable place for everyone. So on this already very warm day, I strongly encourage you to keep in mind those community members who currently suffer with no shade or shelter and support the proposal of Transito Vector for the STAP program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll move on to the next caller. Caller Renee Date Wilson. If you can please unmute your microphone. Renee, good morning to you.
Hi.
You have two items.
Good morning.
On item number 2. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, this is Renee Jake Wilson. I'm speaking as a private citizen. I'm concerned about the digital sign program on the bus shelters in the STAP. They are proven to be distracting to drivers, commercializing our public spaces. They create a visual blight. They are in the STAP program as listed overly bright and as such inconsistent with the regulations in the signage ordinance already adopted by the city for billboards. And they use more energy than necessary. There are 2 potential modifications I see that would be easy to adopt in what you have before you today. Number 1, a general reduction in the number of digital signs. Would the staff work with even 10% fewer digital advertisements converted to non-digital? Number 2, a reduction in the brightness of these signs to the levels called out in the sign ordinance already adopted by the city for billboards. Please note that the staff calls out brightness in lux, while the sign ordinance calls out brightness in candelas. It's not an apples to apples comparison. If you could require consistency of units across both city requirements, that would help with comparison, measurement, ease of operation. I invite you to take those 2 actions today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Renee. We'll move on to the next caller on the line, Beth Holden Garland. Beth Holden Garland, if you can please unmute your microphone. At this time, you will have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2.
Good morning. Anyway, as I said, I found out about this meeting at last minute, but I'm on the Pacific Palisades Executive Committee as well as the Pacific Palisades Residents Association. And I was notified of this. I've been very involved in the community for many years. And I know that there is concern that there's no consideration of the scenic highway part of this with regards to these shelters. And that, years ago that the scenic highway was supposed to preserve our area with inherited treasures as infinite and irreplaceable to be cherished and passed on to future generations. And they assert beauty is good for business for the city. And I've been going to the wildlife ordinance meetings recently of Los Angeles, and they're saying less lighting is good for wildlife. So more advertising on these bus shelters is not great for the environment or wildlife. And I agree with the other caller that especially Sunset Boulevard, it's a very twisty, turny street, people speed, and to have a big advertisement is very distracting for drivers and could cause accidents or death. So I think you guys really need to reconsider at least areas like Sunset Boulevard. Just doesn't make sense for this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. We'll go on to the next caller on the line at this time, Patrick Frank. Patrick Frank, if you can please unmute your microphone at this time, you will have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2.
My name is Patrick Frank, and I'm from Scenic Los Angeles, a chapter of Scenic America. This proposed contract will permit the installation of 700 new digital ad screens across the busiest streets in Los Angeles, thereby multiplying the number of ads for violent movies, unhealthy products, and unreachable consumer goods that every Angelino sees in a given day. These signs will also make our streets more unsafe as they are designed to attract the attention of drivers. The new shelters will also use the same amount of electricity as an entire small neighborhood of Los Angeles, wasting increasingly scarce power on advertising. We all favor a new expanded bus shelter program. That much became clear in the public outreach that was done. But bus shelters can be provided without the digital ad screens, which change every 10 seconds. Scenic Los Angeles therefore opposes this contract in its present form. It will cause more pedestrian fatalities, waste energy, and turn the eyeballs of Angelenos into a collective toxic waste site. Please vote it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. We'll move on to the next caller on the line. Caller ending in 062. Caller ending in 062. If you can please unmute your microphone by pressing *6 at this time. You will have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2. Please go ahead.
All right. Hello, my name is Michael Wilcox. I'm here representing FastLink DTLA, a transportation management organization for downtown Los Angeles, and I'm here to speak in support of StreetsLA's contract with Transito Vector. LA bus riders are in dire need of shelter from the elements and accessible real-time transit information. StreetsLA's contract with Transito delivers both the riders across the city. As part of the contract with Transito, riders will get 3,000 new bus shelters and 450 shade structures. 75% of bus riders in every district will get new shelters. 100% of bus stops will have real-time departure data and city information. And 10 to 15% of all those advocacy spaces will be devoted to city and community messaging. And also, shelter design and amenity provision will prioritize bus riders' comfort and safety. For all these reasons, FastLink DTLA urges Public Works to approve StreetsLA's contract with Transito to bring shelter, comfort, information, and safety to all of LA's bus riders. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. We'll move on to the next caller on the line. Caller ending in 193. Caller ending in 193. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time. The Board of Public Works is considering item number 2. You'll have 2 minutes to speak on item number 2. Please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Reed Puckett. I'm calling in support of Transito Vector's contract to build bus shelters here in LA. This seems like common sense to me. LA can be very hot, much like today. And with climate change, it's just getting even hotter, yet we don't have the shade that we need at our bus stops. We also don't have the real-time transit information at our bus stops, so I have to stand sweating with no shade and no clue if my bus is on time or coming at all. Transito Vector will build 3,000 bus shelters and 450 shade structures, provide real-time transit information and first last mile options like scooter docks and bike racks. And one other note about the current contractor, I read that they failed to build half the bus shelters in the first contract and now want to even sue the city from actually building those bus shelters, which is kind of disgusting. It seems like they screwed us for 20 years, and instead of apologizing for failing, they want to keep screwing us. So please vote yes to approve this contract, and let's finally build all of the bus shelters that we desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. We'll move on to the next caller on the line, Damian Kevitt, or K-E-V-I-T-T. Damian, if you can please unmute your microphone, and I apologize if I mispronounced your last name.
No worries. Hi, my name is Damian Kevitt. Thank you for letting me speak. So I am the executive director and founder of Streets Are For Everyone, a nonprofit advocacy group focused on making our dangerous roads across Southern California safer for all road users. I'm also the co-chair of Faith for Safer Streets, an association of faith-based leaders, primarily in South Los Angeles, representing a network of close to 800 houses of worship. Those who need to use public transportation live in predominantly lower-income neighborhoods and often have to travel across the city for their essential jobs to keep the city moving, building, and working. I can't begin to count the number of times parishioners of our houses of worship have complained about the lack of covered bus shelters, And within the last year or two, a number of those covered bus shelters that exist in South LA, a place that needs those shelters most, have been removed. In my opinion, this is a criminal act against those who need these bus shelters. Personally, as a physically challenged individual, having lost my leg after being hit by a car in 2013, I physically need bus stops where I can sit in shade in order to use public transportation at all. I've been very encouraged by the work Transito Vector is doing to bring transportation equity via transportation hubs to Los Angeles, and do it in a very socially conscious way. I'd also like to say that I really don't understand why Los Angeles can't have 21st century bus shelters that more affluent cities like West Hollywood embrace and already are using. This is the same technology that's being used by Transito Vector in their proposal, and it's already happening over there. So why does the great city of Los Angeles have to have bus shelters from the Stone Age? Please note, those individuals who oppose this proposal are by and large not bus riders. And if you read the actual studies regarding billboards and traffic safety, you'll find that the findings of these studies are being twisted and exaggerated by these non-bus riders to try and scare members of this board into thinking that it could increase road collisions. It's for the above reasons that Faith for Safer Streets, representing close to 800 houses of worship, unanimously voted to support the proposal Transito Vector for staff, and it's for the same reasons that SAFE is also in strong support of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Davian. We'll move on to the next caller at this time. That is caller by the name of call-in user_1. Call-in user_1. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time, please state your name and you'll have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes. Hi, my name is Brenda Martinez, and I am with the Neighborhood Council in Boyle Heights. We submitted a CIS, and earlier you mentioned that there was no CIS submitted by any Neighborhood Council, and I would like to ask the board if they can give me extra time to read my CIS or the CIS for my Neighborhood Council. I also chair the Transportation and Environmental Committee, and I also am the Public Works Liaison for my Neighborhood Council. So?
Yes, Brenda, please go ahead. The CIS statement, you can read that into the record. You have 2 minutes. I have stopped the clock at this time for right now. And just to clarify, did your Neighborhood Council take an official action on this?
Yes, we have submitted it, but submitted it through the old file number, because the file number was recently changed.
Okay, please go ahead and let us know how many more minutes would you need?
I said at least 4 minutes.
4 minutes. And you're with what Neighborhood Council?
I am with the Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council. I chair the Transportation and Environmental Committee, and I also the Public Works Liaison.
And you are speaking on behalf of the Neighborhood Boyle Heights Council.
I'm reading the CIS that the Neighborhood Council, our whole board, had approved.
Okay, perfect. I will go ahead and set the clock at 4 minutes for you, and President Garcia and Commissioners, as Neighborhood Council, they are allowed to speak. There is no time limit announced to the Neighborhood Councils. We just did not know who this person was until now, so we'll go ahead and start the clock for 4 minutes. Again, this is on behalf of the Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council.
Thank you for that.
And we'll note that for the record. Please go ahead, Brenda.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, board members, for this opportunity to speak. So my name is Brenda Martinez, and our Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council submitted a CIS, Council File 20-1536, Sidewalk and Transit Amenities Program. Honorable members of the Public Works Committee, the Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council opposes the resolution of Council File 20-1536 as written because it does not grant enough power to neighborhood councils over the streetscapes in their areas. We request that prior to STP program contract finalization, the city conduct an extensive and open public process in which detailed information about STAP, the RFP, and the contract negotiation process is made widely available, and members of the public, community leaders, and neighborhood community councils are invited to provide ongoing input on community impacts, problems, and ridership needs with respect to STAP in connection with any contract that is eventually negotiated. The Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council is overly concerned about the safety/related liability and aesthetic impacts of digital advertising screens in bus shelters. Studies have shown that changing digital and screens are particularly dangerous as they are designed to distract drivers and result in harm to traffic safety. They will thus exacerbate the problem of driver distraction. Pedestrian fatalities are already a serious problem in LA, and specifically in Boyle Heights, the number has raised to 13% this year. We ask that the city respect and abide by community plan, specific plan, scenic highway, and coastal zone protections and requirements, including in the public right-of-way. And 2, address constituents' concerns about preservation of community character, protection of residential neighborhoods, public safety and driver distraction, environmental impacts, privacy infringement, all protections for scenic corridors, for local street furniture preferences, and for neighborhoods with scenic plan, and codify prohibitions against digital/changing messaging of site advertising. The Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council also adamantly opposed provision for cell phone tracking in the bus shelters plan. This data can be shared with the contractor for ad targeting, and we have no assurance that the data will be safely kept by the city. In a large sense, we have no assurance that the city and the contractor can keep our data safe from hacking and misuse, and the city is not forbidden from selling the data. Further, before any bus shelters with digital technology are installed in our neighborhood, we request a full environmental impact report that considers safety, power usage, aesthetics, and has a stronger and clearly defined opt-out provision for neighborhoods. Thank you to Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council. I just want to add this as a comment. This is my comment. And as a bus rider, and as some people mentioned, the community who suffers for no shade and no shelters. I've been a bus rider for practically all my life. I don't own a car. So I can tell you that living in this community who has a lot of issues, especially with the shade aspect that many people have brought up. You know, our communities were given the shorthand the last time when the bus furniture was built. There's only a small percentage of the bus stops that have shade. I saw some of the prototypes for the prototypes that were presented, and they're shameful. I don't know what a lot of people are talking about when there is no comfort on those. I do have 2 kids with a disability, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. I also think that it's a violation of our Consumer Data Protection Act because every single one of those bus stops will have an antenna, and it will collect the data of my kids, of myself. So I think this needs to go back and needs to be revised. So I really appreciate the time that you have given us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you for speaking on behalf of the Boyle Heights Neighborhood Council. We will go ahead and note that for the record. We'll move on
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We'll move on to the next caller by the name of Megan, no last name, M-E-G-A-N. If you can please unmute your microphone, you'll have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2.
Hi, my name is Megan, and I wanted to thank the City Council and Streets LA for taking the Changing Lanes LA DOT study seriously. The bus shelter program will help create a more gender equitable bus system for women. This program provides real departure information for buses critical for trip planning, prominent beacon, and safety lighting to help make the environment safer. With open and visible design for increased safety, and 75% of bus riders in every district will get a shelter. So I really urge you to pass this program and start getting new bus shelters up ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. We'll move on to the next caller by the name of Eli Lipman, L-I-P-M-E-N. If you can please unmute your microphone, you'll have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2.
Thank you, and thank you to the commission president and the commissioners. On behalf of Move LA, we ask that you advance the sidewalk and transit amenities program today because transit riders have waited far too long for shade equity and bus shelter as they wait for their transit service. Since 2007, our mission has been to build a broad constituency in support of clean public transportation systems and affordable housing, and we support clean, diverse, and fiscally responsible solutions like this. Unfortunately, for too many Angelenos, bus shelters have been woefully inadequate or simply non-existent. Over the past 20 years, there have been fewer than 700 new bus shelters installed, and nearly 75% of bus shelters in the city lack basic amenities, shade, seating, or real-time route information. And this is an issue of equity and climate justice in disadvantaged communities. These communities are exposed to extreme heat by rising temperatures. In fact, during a 3-day California heat wave in 2006, over 600 people died and resulted in over 16,000 emergency room visits. 90% of those affected in areas well below the federal poverty line. And with bus headways reaching up to 30 minutes in some places like the San Fernando Valley, this is a major healthcare crisis. We actually sponsored legislation, Assembly Bills 1975, because we believe we need to prioritize shade for low-income transit riders and people of color who are on the front lines of climate change. Our city has sadly moved just too slowly to provide protection for its residents, and that's why we are supporting the STAP program today and the contract being proposed by the City of Los Angeles with Transito Vector. We cannot wait another month to start the effort to provide shade equity and believe it's important to move forward expeditiously. So this is going to create an important and sustained asset for the city and communities for bus riders, cyclists, pedestrians, and others who use that shade. It's going to support mobility hubs, which is necessary infrastructure to get people out of their cars and encourage people to take public transit regularly. It's going to result in 75% of bus riders in every district with a shelter and real-time departure and city information. And it's also, I want to talk specifically about the essential amenity of water filling stations and cooling stops, which is a proposal we made and Transito Vector integrated into their plans. We encourage this board to work closely with DWP to implement as many bus shelters with water filling stations and cooling facilities integrated into the design because extreme heat is going to impact all of us and we need places to cool down. So thank you for your time and have a great, morning. Take care.
Thank you, Eli. We'll move on to the last caller on the line, caller ending in 136, caller ending in 136. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time by pressing *6. Please state your name and which item you'd like to speak on. I'm sorry, please state your name, and this is item number 2. My apologies.
Okay. Good morning, committee commissioners. This is Jessica Meany from Investing in Place. At Investing in Place, we've been working on the issue of bus shelters for several years with community groups. We've recently conducted an observational survey of over several hundred bus stops and the bus experience, and we continue to hear again and again, the waiting is the hardest part, particularly for where the bus stops are located, close to the street, to busy traffic, the lack of shade that always comes up, consistency, litter, the lack of cleanliness, the lack of a bathroom, the lack of water fountains, all of that. We rarely hear about digital amenities. I just want to put out there, but what I really hope you will think about is that transportation and bus shelters and bus stops are part of our critical transportation network. They're part of our sidewalks. They're part of how we get around. There's nothing stopping the city from using transportation dollars to use it. The new federal money is eligible for bus shelters. Right now, this whole conversation for the past 2 years has been rooted in advertising revenue and not about improving the conditions and access. I have a couple of outstanding questions that have never really been answered. One, let me stop myself. There's over 8,000 bus stops in the city of Los Angeles. How many of those are going to have shelter and shade? Then that's triple that or covered, it goes further. Many of those bus stops are not ADA accessible. Will we be fixing those to improve ramps and ensure access for those in mobility devices to use them? Also, where is the revenue going to go once the debt is paid off? Historically, that's gone half to the general fund and half to the city council district within. I urge you to reinvest those dollars right back into our sidewalks. But I just really wonder, like, and want to push the city that we should be going above and beyond this contract and leveraging the infrastructure dollars that are coming from the federal government as well as Metro to ensure our bus stops are part of the transportation network. And also, there's a lot of criticism about the past 20 years of our bus shelter program. But if you look at the 2012 audit done by then Controller Wendy Gould, it points to City Council making a decision when they adopted the contract 20 years ago. So all these details really matter. Last thing, I hope you follow the sign ordinance for the digital stuff from the Planning Commission. Thanks.
Thank you so much. President Garcia, we do have, that does clear the queue for speakers under the original 23. We do have 2 callers on the line that raised their hand after the cutoff time was called for this item and after the item was considered. Would you like to consider those 2 additional comments?
Fine, let's consider those 2.
Okay, and then just to double check with Edward Wallace from the Outdoor Deco team, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak as a private citizen or?
I'm sorry, I don't.
090?
Yeah, I don't show that my hand is raised, so I apologize if it is. I'll see if I can clear it.
213090. I'll go ahead and lower your hand.
Thank you. Well, that's not my number. Mine is 5090.
We'll just say the callers.
You're 5090, right? Area code 213?
Yes. No. 917.
That's not you. That's not you. Okay. My apologies, Edward.
I don't want to deprive anybody if they have their hand up.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna double check that line. It seems like you have the last same 3 digits, so I will double check that line for you. But thank you, Edward.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take caller with 090. You did have your hand raised. 090. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time by pressing *6. Please state your name and you'll have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2. This is caller ending in 090, area code 213.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, hi. So my name is Alex. I've been a bus rider for almost 2 decades. There are, in fact, several 100,000 daily bus riders, and it feels like Outfront Deco has been screwing us over for the past 20 years, and I'm pissed, and sitting on this call, I just got even more pissed. I know the council has to follow a protocol, but, like, making all of us wait so that everyone else could, quote, get back to work, it's just such a perfect example of how the rest of us are overlooked all the time. Like, if you're not wealthy or powerful, like, getting your voices heard means taking time off work, means sitting on hold, and that's, like, really hard to do, and it means something that so many of us have taken the time to call in today. And I'll get to my actual point. I know I only have 2 minutes, but did you guys notice that, like, the people calling in for the old contracts, it feels like they're reading canned statements, and those of us who support Transito, like, are actual bus riders? Outfront Deco, they're a failed contractor. They took advantage of the city. They took money from ads. They failed to build the bus shelters. I think they promised something like 150 public toilets, which we all know is a huge issue. And I think they delivered something like, 15, and they act like we should be grateful and re-up their contract. I just don't know how this city can take anything they say seriously. Like, it's a complete breach of trust. If I had hired them to do work on my apartment, I would fire them immediately. I would leave a horrible review on Yelp. I would find a new contractor. So please vote yes on this contract. Like, get a new company in here, build actual bus shelters. And if they don't perform, fire them and find a new contractor then. But, like, don't continue to let all of us be held hostage by a company that has already proven that they don't deliver on what they promise. And as far as digital ads, digital ads are how we pay for things. Like, everybody knows ads are how things get paid for. And the idea that they're distracting, which I've heard today, is just such a dog whistle. Like, oh, it's okay in some neighborhoods, but it's not okay in the Palisades. There's already digital advertising all over the city. The only difference is that advertising makes a rich company richer, and this advertising provides us with services that we desperately need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience, caller 090. I appreciate it. We'll move on to the last 2 callers that the president has allowed to join for public comment on item number 2. Caller ending in 900, area code 213, ending in 900. If you can please unmute your microphone at this time by pressing *6. You will have 2 minutes to speak under item number 2. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Hillary Norton, and I am the Executive Director of FastLink DTLA, and I'm also a California Transportation Commissioner, but I'm speaking in my capacity as the FastLink DTLA Executive Director. The reason I wanted to speak in support of the Transito Vector contract is that we need to have all of these 3,000 shelters and these additional services, because not only is this important for us bus riders, but it is also important for people who are walking, biking, and scootering along the sidewalks. Having digital signs will do two things. One, it will help light the passageways to and from the stations. In addition, I fully support that we invest more in a full system of these stations by making sure that with the federal money that my colleague Jessica also talked about, we focus on additional safety measures, additional protections for people as we are waiting for bus at night and during the day in the heat. The real-time bus information is going to be so helpful for all of us traveling together, especially with children, and making sure that we can come out to the shelters when needed and stay in buildings, stay at our workplace when we know that the buses aren't there. One thing that is so important about having digital signs is that in any other city that I go to, when I see digital advertising on bus shelters, that tells me that this is a seamless and important part of the mobility in a city, that it is prized, it is well treated, and it is seen as bringing in ideal and choice riders. It is not about advertising to drivers. It is about making sure that we have other funds that can contribute to a system that right now is starving for transit operations dollars. I support Transito and Vector in their goals of having this link to mobility hubs. As someone who worked on the mobility hubs as early as 2009, this needs to be an important link to our multimodal transportation network, especially EV supported. In addition, I just ask that we continue to look at ways that Public Works Board, the city, and Metro can support the fact that people who are traveling on our bus system are vulnerable and need protection not only from the elements but from to be safe as we wait for a system that should be supporting us. I want to thank you for your time today, and thank you for your consideration of a wonderful company in Transito Vector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hillary. And I do see that your hand is raised through another sign-in, so I'll go ahead and lower that hand as well. Hillary Norton, thank you again. We'll take the last caller on the line, Cesar Estrada. Cesar Estrada, if you can please unmute your microphone at this time. You'll have 2 minutes to speak under this item. Please go ahead, Cesar.
Hello, everyone. I'm a Cesar Estrada with All American War veteran. I think this project by
Cesar, if you can hear us, you're coming in and out. We're not getting a clear audio from you, Cesar. I stopped the clock for you. Cesar, if you can hear us, stop the clock for your time at this time. We're not getting clarity from your line. I am also getting feedback. Are you on the line? Are you dialing in twice, or do you have two devices near you?
Only one, but I know it's
Okay, perfect. We can hear you right. We can hear you right now. I only have 20 seconds on the clock right now. I did stop the clock, so I'm going to go ahead and restart the time for you. You still have 1 minute and 40 seconds, and hopefully your audio will come through. Please go ahead.
I'll just email. Can I just email this and to the rest of the? It may be a little bit too long, and
Caesar, I went ahead and stopped the clock again for you. The audio came in, but then it faded out again. We cannot hear you. Caesar, if you can hear us. Caesar Estrada, if you can hear us, if you can just confirm. Caesar, we cannot hear you. Your audio line is coming in and out. If you'd like, Caesar, if you want to log out and then log back in, and I can ask the president to see if we can take your comment towards the end of the presentation. President Garcia, this is an added call. At this time, we do have an audio issue with Caesar Estrada. If you'd like, I can go ahead and continue the clock, but we are not getting any reception from his line.
We can, we're running the clock right now, right, on this audio?
No, I stopped the clock. I stopped the clock at 43 seconds. If it's okay with your board, I can have Caesar log out and log back in, and then before your board considers any motion, if at all, I can go ahead and have Caesar raise his hand at that time, and perhaps you can take his comment before the item is closed.
Well, I'd rather not do that. I wanted to kind of handle all the public comment now. Let's see. Let's try him one more time. He's on mute now. We'll give him one more time. One more time.
He has his hand raised.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Caesar Estrada, if you can unmute your microphone. You are at 43 seconds right now, but we're having audio issues. Let's go ahead and try this one more time. Please go ahead. Go ahead and try.
I do apologize. Anyway, let me read this again. As a member of the lead of this local group, to say hi, passengers needs the shelters and bus current heading trail and trail.
Mr. Estrada, I just want to let you know that your comments are not coming in clear. We're going to run the clock to 2 minutes, and then we're going to close public comments.
So we are all concerned about this. Going forward, I may consider a project. It's
Mr. Estrada, your comment, public comment has not been heard clearly. I suggest you submit your comment via email or through our Google form to make it official. Dr. Campos, how many our 2 minute time? Dr. Campos?
Yes, President Garcia, it is now 2 minutes, and Mr. Estrada's line has been open for at minimum 2 minutes.
Okay, I feel it's fair. We can close it. Mr. Estrada, I strongly recommend you submit your public comment via Google form or email. So it goes into the record. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you. All right, Dr. Campos?
President Garcia, that clears the queue for public comment for item number 2.
Great, thank you very much. I want to say to all those callers that called in, thank you for your time, for your passion, your commitment to our city. We appreciate it. We heard all your comments, and they're all been recorded into the official record for today's item. And with that, I will start the presentation. Since we have an official protest, we are going to allow some time for our protester and also our applicant, or at this point, our winner of the selected proposed winner at this point of the current contract. I want to just make sure that we're all knowing what we're here to do today, colleagues. We are here to reconsider and approve the revised contract of the staff with Transito Vector, previously approved by the Board of Public Works on May 11, 2022, subject to the approval of the Los Angeles City Council and mayor approval. And also authorize the president and 2 members of the Board of Public Works to execute the revised contract with Transito Vector upon approval by the Los Angeles City Council and mayor, including all applicable sequel actions. I understand we have folks from Front Deco, and then we also have folks from Transito Vector here today. If it's okay with you, can you open your videos, those that are going to be speaking on behalf of each of the party? That includes also Bureau of Street Services. I will also ask that everybody place themselves on mute unless you're speaking. If you are not speaking, I will ask for you to please place yourself on mute. I will also ask from everybody that's going to speak to place your phones on mute while you speak. I'd rather not have any interruptions from any cell phones during the time that you are speaking. We are going to hear everyone, and I would like to ask from out front to go, just to give some time for all of these. I don't see our front to go folks with their video on. Give me a second. Okay, here we go. Mr. Wallace, you're here from front to go?
Yes, ma'am, I am. Along with Ellen Berkowitz, who, if we could, we'd speak together and she'd go first.
Yes, that's fine. I just want to make sure I'm sensitive to everybody's time here. Would 15 minutes be enough time for your presentation? Okay. And then
Yes,
I also want to...
I think more than enough.
Okay, 15 minutes. Thank you so much, Mr. Wallace and Ms. Berkowitz. And Mr. Itzkowitz and Mr. Keen, you are here from representing Transito Vector, right?
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Itzkowitz and Mr. Keen and Mr. O, you're also from Transito?
That's correct. Thank you.
I will also give you, is it okay for 15 minutes? Is that enough time for you to make your presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay. The order we're gonna go is we're gonna give first Bureau of Street Services, Shirley Lau and Lance from the Bureau of Street Services will go first and set the stage of where we're at. I'm gonna then have Mr. Wallace and Ms. Berkowitz to go second. Mr. Itzkowitz, Mr. King, and Mr. O, you will go thirdly, and then if there's any rebuttal against all of this, we'll work it out. So I'm sorry, I think I screwed it. It's Transito, Bureau of Street Services, Transito, Deco, and then if there's any rebuttal, we'll make sure that we can go through that. Lastly, after we're done with hearing everybody's protest, commissioners, it will be your opportunity to ask any questions from any of the parties involved. And then we'll have a discussion around that. Are there any? Yes, sir.
This is Mark Borzakowski from Vector Media, a part of Transito Vector. I am also a...
Okay, you're part of Transito's time then.
Thank you very much.
Okay, got it. All right. Any objections? So let me just kind of go back to it because I think we went Street Services, Transito, give your statement. Deco gives your statement, and then we'll have any rebuttal after that from Transito. Then we'll have questions from commissioners to everyone, and then we'll hopefully come to a fruitful discussion and fruitful recommendations. Okay. Any objections on anything I've just stated? Hearing none, I'm going to now pass the presentation microphone to Shirley Lau, and that's with the Bureau of Street Services.
Good morning. Thank you, President Garcia. Shirley Lau with the Bureau of Street Services. I'm here with my colleague Lance Orishi, the Contract Administrator for the Bureau on Street Furniture Program. On May 11th, 2022, your board approved Streets LA's negotiated contract for the Sidewalk and Transit Amenities Program, known as STAP, to Transito Vector LLC. And in accordance with Mayoral Executive Directive number 3, which is also known as ED3, the approved contract was forwarded to the CAO's office for its review. So ED3 review is initiated following the Board of Public Works approval of contract before it goes to City Council for consideration. During this time, the CAO presented a number of recommendations and edits intended to improve and strengthen the contract. Streets LA has reviewed the CAO's recommended edits, and we agree that the edits provide additional clarity and improvements to this contract. We have incorporated those edits into the revised contract as attachment transmittal number one to the board report. We are now seeking the board to reconsider and approve this negotiated contract. Transito Vector has reviewed the revised contract for staff, and they find the changes acceptable. So I'll now kind of go over the substantive changes to this revised contract. There are 5 main items that I'd like to go over. The first three items that I will go over deals with approval process. So subsequent to the department's approval, these 3 items will go to City Council and Mayor. So under Section 3.5 Program Elements, new technologies and other additional elements to staff such as solar options, hydration stations, hand sanitizing stations, and sensors like for air quality and pet vehicular counts. Those will now require City Council and mayoral approval. Another item under Section 4.6, any cost to implement experiential marketing and other advertising opportunities to be borne by gross revenue share with the city, that will require City Council and mayoral approval. Under Section 4.7, under annual program reporting and review, during our annual program review of the contract, any proposed changes to fees or costs that should be capitalized by the city, subsequent to the department's approval, it will require City Council and Mayor approval. So the last 2 items I want to go over. First, with the discussion of federal dollars that are out there from the infrastructure bill, the Bureau is seeking to use federal grants to pay for capital expenditures of this program. And because of that potential procurement, we feel that we wanted to add the language in to ensure procurement of materials is in compliance with all federal requirements, should federal funds be utilized in the capital costs. So that is in Section 10.1.9 of the revised contract. And lastly, under Section 10.4.3 and revenue share, the city shall have the right to audit the calculation of and remission of payments to the city, and the contractor will fully cooperate with any auditor selected by the city. So those are the 5 substantive changes we have, as I just reported. And now I'd like to have Mr. Lance Oishi, since it has been a long time since we've been to the board on this item, I think it's helpful for Mr. Oishi to go over the RFP process, evaluation team, and then also the selection of Transito Vector.
Thank you, Shirley. Good morning, everybody. Lance Oishi with the Bureau of Street Services, and as Shirley mentioned, because it's been a little bit of time since we've last talked about the contract, we thought it'd be beneficial to walk through the RFP process and just remind everybody where we've been so we know where we're going forward from. So back in November of 2020, the City Council, the Board of Public Works, authorized the Street Services to release the RFP for the Sidewalk and Transit Amenities Program, or STAP. On February 19th of 2021, we received 4 proposals from 4 different teams, and we went through an evaluation process with a team that consisted of members from 10 different agencies, including the Mayor's Office, the City Administrator's Office, the Chief Legislative Analyst's Office, Metro, Department of Transportation, Department of City Planning, ITA, the Bureau of Street Services, the Bureau of Engineering, and the Bureau of Street Lighting. And out of those 10 offices, we actually had 17 members on that committee that were evaluating the proposals. As a result of that effort, on May 5th, we came before the board with a recommendation of the 2 top proposers, which were Transito Vector and Alfred Decaux. And, the actual evaluation of the initial proposals came in 2 parts. There were a technical score, which was based upon the technical proposal of each team, and then a price proposal score. And then those scores were combined to create the final score and help us determine who the top 2 proposers were. Under the technical scoring system, Transito Vector came out as our #1 proposer, followed by Intersection. 3rd place was Outfront to Go, and then 4th place was Inside Street Media. In the price proposal ranking, the top proposer turned out to be Transito Vector, with Outfront to Go being ranked as our number two company for the price proposal. And Intersection and Insight, actually, their proposals had their price proposals had certain issues with them, so neither of them were considered. So, just by way of the by combining the technical score rankings and then the price proposal rankings, again, we came up with the top 2 proposers being Transito Vector and Outfront to Go. Following the May 5th board hearing is when we actually asked the board for a request to negotiate with the top 2 proposers, and we wanted to actually go through an additional evaluation process that included a demonstration of technologies which occurred in July of 2021. We also asked both proposers to submit best and final offers or develop best and final offers in July of 2021, and they submitted their best and final offers in August of 2021. Following the submittal of their best and final offers, which again were evaluated by the same evaluation committee, the evaluation committee actually selected Transito Vector and felt that their proposal was superior to the proposal submitted by Outfront to Go. And so from that point on, in late August, with the authority that we had from the board previously in May, we went ahead and initiated a negotiation process. As a result of that negotiation process, we had our contract that we developed met with the tenets of the RFP itself. So some of the features of our new contract are that we will have 3,000 transit shelters, less than 25% of which will have digital displays. We'll have 400 to 500 refresh shelters, which will be existing shelters that are reused to help us expand more shade and safety equity that much quicker at existing bus stops. We also have 450 shade structures without advertising. We have emergency call features, a content management system to help us control the digital assets. We have scooter docks, e-lockers, and kiosks and urban panels. We have options for solar energy and cooling devices, and hand sanitizing and hydration stations. We have alternatives to work with third parties such as Metro on their BRT lines to develop special shelters that are specific to those particular projects. And then, of course, there's the city participation in the CapEx, which is kind of the biggest change between our existing program and our new program right now. As a result of the city participating in the CapEx, capital expense cost, the city actually will receive a 60.5% share of program revenues. And the contract itself is for a 10-year term with 2 options for 5-year term extensions. I just kind of want to mention that one of the things that's a big difference between our present program and our future program is that we, the city, are actually determining where we want to put our bus shelters. And we used a GIS mapping system and basically a prioritized set of 5 data sets to help us determine where we want to put those shelters at. And so we are using ridership data, specifically boarding numbers, exposure to heat, equity-focused communities, meaning communities that are disadvantaged presently, bus stop proximity to trip generators, and long wait time at bus stops to help us determine where we want to put our shelters in the program moving forward. And of course, this is all to achieve the goal of shade, safety, shelter, and comfort for the new program. One last thing I wanted to mention is that as part of this effort to help us formulate this contract, we actually did an extensive community engagements process that started in November of 2020. And since that time, we've done over 57 outreach meetings, and we've had over 500 people attend those outreach meetings. And this does not include the people that actually visited our demonstration of technologies, which ran for a 19-day period in July 2021, as I mentioned before. And so we believe that we've developed a contract that addresses the tenants that we wanted to and goals within the RFP itself, and it's going to bring fantastic services to the city moving forward. And so that's the reason why we are recommending that the board approve this contract and move forward with Transito Vector as our next service provider. Thank you.
Shirley and Laos, are you done, or there's more on your presentation?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, for the revised contract, there were some clarifications that were proposed and incorporated into the contract as well that I didn't, I just want to mention one, in that there were 3,000 shelters mentioned in the contract, and we added, or the CIO had recommended to add the words goal to 3,000 for transit shelters. And it's not really a substantive change, but it's a clarification. And the reason is that should the city could decide not to fund the construction of 3,000 shelters, so we wanted to have the words goal of 3,000. So that was just a clarification recommended by the CAO and also incorporated in this revision. At this point, I think Lance and I are complete with our presentation, and we can answer questions afterwards. President Garcia, that's okay, unless anybody wanted to ask us questions on what we just presented right now. That's fine. I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you, Shirley, for that. We're going to hold all questions until the end of all the presentations, and then commissioners can ask all the questions that they would like. Thank you for your presentation, Shirley. And Lance, please stay there. I'm sure we will have questions for you. Okay, I will now move forward with the current proposal, which is a Transito Vector, to provide your opening statement on this. Again, you do have a 15-minute time for your presentation. I hope that's enough. Thank you, Mr. O.
Thank you, fellow commissioners. I will keep it short, actually. I know everyone is pressed for time. I think our introduction is actually fairly simple. My name is Gene O. I am the CEO of Transito. We help cities and transit agencies operate new mobility and smart infrastructure projects. It's something we've been doing since 2004, which in our industry kind of makes us a dinosaur. We've been one of the longest running new mobility operators in the industry. Here in LA, we've actually been operating since 2014. We've helped start the Metro Bike Share, Metro Bike Hub, and also the LA DOT Mobility Hubs projects. All of these new forms of mobility, right, of course, kind of geeks me out. I'm a transit geek, I admit it. But really, they only work best with a strong public transit system. And that's why I'm so excited to share our vision for bus stops. As we know, all of us understand that bus stops and buses are so vital in Los Angeles, especially for our most transit-dependent citizens. Metro's last ridership survey actually brought that to light, right? The average household income of bus riders is $18,000. These are our seniors, these are our people of color, these are our undocumented workers, the disabled community. They're the ones that are the most transit dependent. And so, of course, the bus is something that is more to them than anyone else, really. So our vision, of course, in response to that, not only provides, shelter, shade, safety, and comfort, of course, but really we wanted to elevate that, right? Because we wanted to give the respect that everyday bus riders have. We call them our essential workers, but we feel like we haven't been treating them like essential workers, with the reflection of our bus stops over the last 20 years, right? So we wanted to supplement not just the basics, but add real-time bus departures, city notifications, emergency broadcasts, and ample seating, of course, for our wheelchair patrons at all 3,000 locations. And that's the important thing, is that oftentimes what you notice is that, the frills and the fancy stuff are almost considered add-ons. And they're added on to, the boutique bus stops or the locations where it gets most eyeballs. But we really understand that, it's all about the total trip journey, right? Where you enter to get to the bus and where you exit to get to the bus. And although a lot of times people are exiting in downtown, they're entering the bus experience, in parts of LA that's far away and maybe are not viable from an advertising perspective. it's important to us that we provided all of these benefits at all of our locations. So that was the commitment that we're really proud of. So all of our decisions, of course, are based on improving equity and helping the city achieve its kind of really ambitious plans like mobility plan and sustainability plan. That's the other thing that we really wanted to emphasize is that, as an operator for the city, working on behalf of the city, it's important that we, look at STAP as part of a bigger strategy, right? So when we talk about the mobility plan, sustainability plan, we really look at STAP as a way to achieve those visions and achieve the goals that are brought upon in these plans. So for example, scooter docks will reduce pedestrian tripping hazards, right? Because right now they're strewn everywhere. But they'll also solve the first mile, last mile issue with public transit. So it's a big, big solution. Delivery lockers, for example, will address real concerns of online package theft for bus riders. We actually spoke with Amazon, and they told us that LA was their #1 region for mail theft, especially because there's so many apartment dwellers. So, the idea of creating these solutions, so for example, delivery lockers, it will not only provide real solutions now, but it also ushers in this long-term solution for last mile logistics. So this is what it's all about, is creating, solutions that help really solve problems for everyday bus riders today, but really helps the city kind of usher in a smart city future that's going to be very inclusive for everyone. We also have an innovative strategy to ensure that issues that plague the last program aren't repeated, right? We've devised an innovative permit planning process, which I'd love to share with you if you have more time. We have a very robust outreach program, and we have a very inclusive planning and design program. These are all things that we think will not only be very inclusive and make sure everyone has their voices heard, but will ensure quicker approvals and installations. In fact, we've conducted broad outreach really for the past 2 years. And we've met with many of the callers that you heard today, both in support of and opposition of. And we've heard their voices. We've incorporated a lot of their ideas into our plans. And it's something that we feel like we presented a vision that really is something that's inclusive of many voices and many ambitions, not just ours. So in summary, we feel like for too long the tail has wagged the dog, right? Like, this is not an advertising program. It's a transportation program. Advertising revenues is simply a means to an end. And that end is to improve the bus riding experience, right? Create equity and improve the environment. So like I said, I'm a self-professed transit geek, right? I've lived and breathed this stuff for 20 years. And I'm really looking forward to sharing our vision and executing on it for the next 20 years. So I appreciate your time. And I'd like to pass this on to Mark Borzakowski, the other half of Transito Vector.
Great. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Dr. Campos, and thank you, commissioners, for your time today and your interest in readdressing an issue of such importance to so many Angelenos. To quickly introduce myself, as Gene said, I'm Mark Borzakowski, and I'm the CEO of Vector Media, which makes up one half of the Transito Vector team, the proposed awardee for the new STAP program. Our team is truly honored and humbled to have been selected for the city-changing opportunity, even never more so than after listening to some of the stories we just heard from riders. And we look forward to bringing to LA our quarter century of experience with working with cities on transit and street furniture projects. As we all just heard, this program is really about equity and much-needed services for Angelenos, but as advertising is an important component of realizing that vision, I would like to offer a little bit about Vector's experience and vision. Over the past 25 years, Vector's become one of the largest outdoor media companies in the country. We are transit focused. We currently operate in over 50 US markets, and we serve as the exclusive media partner for 35 municipal agencies. Among our many municipal partnerships, we operate and have in the past operated more than 20 street furniture contracts, including in diverse cities like New York, Boston, New Orleans, Chicago, Las Vegas, Baltimore, and Orlando. And our success has really been the result of a dedicated focus on transit assets. We believe that our partners, and in particular STAP, deserves a partner that is dedicated to promoting STAP assets and whose focus is not divided between STAP and thousands of other billboards in the market. Additionally, we're heavily focused on building a strong local foundation, as we feel ties to the local business community are going to be the lifeblood of this program. Our experience during COVID, when national advertising basically dried up, served only to reinforce just how important local business is to a city and to a city program such as this. And using this dedicated focus and experience, we're going to build this strong local base, and we're going to augment it with national advertisers so that we can ensure that staff has a diverse and stable base for the city of Los Angeles. Really, staff represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Los Angeles to redefine the public space and to provide its citizens with a bus shelter and amenity program that improves riders' quality of life through enhanced shelter, shade, safety, and comfort. And in staff, we see the future of urban mobility, and we're proud to be partnering with Transito, the leader in smart mobility solutions. For way too long, transit infrastructure has been advertiser-driven, just as Gene mentioned. We feel this model is outdated, and it hasn't led to the type of services and amenities that Angelenos deserve. With STAP, the city was clear about its desire to prioritize the needs of riders and citizens, and we believe that the combination of Transito and Vector truly gives the city the best of both worlds: an innovative and established leader in smart mobility and a transit-dedicated advertising specialist. In its bid, Transito Vector also brought together additional experts to ensure that every element of the program lives up to its promise and potential. We look forward to building a strong and transparent partnership with the City of Los Angeles over the next 20 years and working together to improve the lives of Angelenos. Again, thank you so much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time.
Is that it for your team, Mr. O and Mr. Markowitz? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We do have our team from Minot that is going to be ready in case there's any questions that we need to answer. So we'll reserve that time for later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. O. Okay. Thank you, Transito, for your presentation. We'll move on now with Outfront Decor. Mr. Wallace and Ms. Berkowitz, you have 15 minutes. However you want to do it, who goes first, it's really up to you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is is it afternoon yet? My name is Ellen Berkowitz, and together with my colleague Ed Wallace, we serve as outside counsel to Outfront Decor. We were both part of the award process on behalf of our client 21 years ago. Ed actually negotiated with the city for the current contract. We want to thank you for giving us time to testify and for your consideration of our comments today. I'm going to ask Ed to speak first about public policy and equity issues that you'll be deciding today, and then I'll come back and provide some other information. But suffice it to say, we have concluded that this award takes irresponsible risks at both the public service and fiscal expense of the city. And in doing so, we found that the award violates city procurement law and fundamental constitutional principles of fairness that we've outlined in the letter we submitted. But the primary victims of these violations of law are not us, the losing proposers, or who very well may soon be the losing proposers. It's really the transit-dependent community and the taxpayers who believe they're getting something from this contract that, in fact, they are not. And I'll respond to that more directly in my remarks. But now I'd like to turn it over to Ed.
Mr. Wallace, you're on mute, sir.
I apologize again, and I said such nice things you didn't hear. I simply said thank you, President Garcia and members of the Commission. We really do appreciate your time and patience in hearing everybody out. But we have some questions for the members of the Commission and yourself, because sadly we believe that even if we turn out to be the loser, the people of Los Angeles will lose something more. Here's why. Diverting $237 million to fund a project that the city has had and can have for free with new shelters and new equipment fails the neediest among us all who need essential services and, of course, most especially housing. I served in government. Every dollar is precious. The current program provides free services and public toilets and a positive cash payment to the city. Why would the Commission therefore vote to give up that benefit for what you will see as a risky and expensive investment with no guarantee or certainty of recoupment. Transito Vector is a startup with new ideas, and we commend them on their new ideas, but no real track record, despite the names of big cities, on a scale of 3,000 bus shelters that are promised but not obligated here. By contrast, Outfront to Co. is a world-class joint effort of two of the world's largest advertising-supported street furniture companies, and between them they operate in thousands of cities worldwide, New York, Chicago, Boston, London, etc. In the big city, big sidewalk environment, experience really does matter. Sadly, I predict that Transito Vector, even if they mean well, will fail and leave LA bus riders with a half-built-out system and LA taxpayers holding the bag on a $250 million investment that they are inducing Los Angeles to make. As for economics, our clients, who are two of the most effective sellers of advertising, cannot answer a simple question. Transito Vector makes two incredible predictions. We recommend that you not listen to us, but listen to some real experts in the financial community who follow the advertising companies every day. They advise investors and pension funds buy or sell in those major companies. So please don't take our word for it. I wish you would, but I'd rather that the commission and the subsequent government actors just simply say, let's get it right. And if getting it right turns out to be Transito, you'll see we will leave in the most peaceable way. If getting it right means that this prediction and these forecasts are wrong, then we hope you'll at least know before you start investing public money. So the first question, Transito claims it can sell $28 million of advertising in year one without using the existing structures, and we would ask you most specifically to clarify whether they intend or whether the city has agreed without telling anybody that they can use those shelters, because both the RFP prohibited us from bidding on the use of those shelters, and the existing contract prohibits the use of those shelters. So you'd not only have a procurement violation, you'd have a contract violation if those shelters were sold for advertising. By way of history, I was asked by Adele 2 years ago about this very question under the existing contract. And I said, what a shame if you waste public opportunity to realize value to the people, whether it's to the company or to the people or a split. And he said emphatically, and the BAFO says, and I believe your counsel will tell you, you cannot use the existing shelters. So how, this is not a financial analysis question, this is a common sense question. How would anybody think they could make $28 million in 1 year with no advertising panels? And just to give you the reality, putting aside the fact that the council insisted on putting in a veto per council member, many of your testifiers referred to that. They blame us for that. Believe me, I was a city council member once in my life. I advised against it to the revered Ron Deaton, and he said no, the council wanted the veto. And that's why the number of shelters was lower than what we were able to deliver. So if you do think 28 million sounds too good to be true, please confirm, because we think it is. The second question is this inducement to invest $250 million. You've had it with no investment by the city, cash flow positive to the city. Now the city has decided, it's unusual to me that a city would spend money on something it didn't have to. But they predict that there will be $638 million of advertising sales over the next 10 years. That's 143% higher than the two of the three largest advertising companies in the world think can be achieved, Outfront and Deco. It's not realistic, nobody can do it, but please get the financial advice to validate that number. If the analysis affirms that Transito Vector's crystal ball is plausible, then you'll feel you did the right thing. If, as we believe, it tells you it can't be, then you'll still feel you did the right thing by rejecting the contract. Do it for the sake of Angelenos, not for the losing proposers. As for services, another couple of questions. And I've heard everybody talking, and I heard Mr. Oishi, who I've known for 21 years and respected and worked out a very wonderful deal, I think, that we thought would serve the people, but for that council member veto. And he said the phrase, up to 3,000 shelters. And I heard everybody who testified in favor of this contract 3,000 shelters. It's not true. So read the contract, please, because there's no 3,000 guarantee in there. I heard the number 450 shade shelters. Don't believe me, go read the contract. Ask your counsel, ask Lance Owishi directly and on the record. Are they guaranteed to get 450 shade structures from Transito? The answer is no. In fact, I don't even believe those shade structures have actually been designed yet per the contract. And if you believe that Los Angeles is certainly getting all new shelters, well, that's what the RFP required. That's what my client bid. But you just heard the Transito say refurbished shelters. Well, A, that violates the RFP and the BAFO. B, it probably violates my client's rights if they put ads on it. But C, it's a false promise that you were going to get all new shelters. So again, please don't think of me as just here to advance my client. We care about Los Angeles and have spent 20 years trying to deliver services. You've got a ton of documents. You don't need me to go through them. Please, though, ask your legal counsel about the questions, because as I read the contract, there's a lot of phrasing that I would call, in non-lawyers' terms, kinda, sorta, maybe language. That's not good enough for the people of Los Angeles. And it's not good enough for the people around the country. I've done these deals in Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Boston, etc. It's just not good enough. And this commission should insist on it for the good of the people. As Ellen will detail, the phony predictions and the watered-down deliverables violate your procurement law. Most important, though, they risk a loss of public service and of public money. I had the privilege of serving in government myself. I really empathize with what you're up against today. How can you second-guess the staff? How can you know whether the numbers are real? Well, I confronted a similar dilemma, and you just read the book, City for Sale, because I believed the staff, and I believed the numbers I was told, and it blew up as one of the greatest scandals in the city in which I served. So please, as Mayor Daley did in Chicago, go hire an outside, top-notch consulting firm, either an investment bank or an accounting firm that studies this industry, and say, are these numbers realistic? If you do that, we think you'll conclude what we have. The $28 million in 1 year with no ad panels is too good to be true. Thank you. I'll turn it back to Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners, again, for letting us speak today. So as you know, the RFP allows us the right to protest. But please understand that protest right isn't for our benefit. It isn't intended to simply be a platform to allow us to air our grievances. Rather, the purpose of the protest right is so that you can be educated and knowledgeable about the matter before you. It's so that you can hear concerns from interested, invested, and informed parties like us. And we do have a few additional concerns that we wanted to share with you. We've outlined many of them in the letter submitted to you yesterday afternoon. One of our biggest concerns is that because of the timing of the receipt of the revised contract and the documents that we had requested pursuant to our Public Records Act request well over 2 months ago, we only just received all those documents on Friday. We were unable to provide our letter until yesterday. We haven't even seen the CAO report. So of course that means you barely had the opportunity to digest the information we shared with you, not to mention what I understand were hundreds of comments that came through the other day. But while yes, that is a violation of our rights, it's also harmful to you and the public because the issues that we raise, which as Ed said, affect the public and the taxpayer, those issues just can't possibly get the attention they warrant in such a short amount of time. Now, I plan to touch on, as Ed said, some of the serious legal issues we have with the process, but I'd actually like to shift my remarks and instead address some of the comments received from the public today. Now, many speakers spoke about how important it is to provide 3,000 bus shelters and 450 shade structures, as well as address digital divide issues, hydration stations, other things of that nature. But none of these are required by the contract any longer. Neither are interactive kiosks, vending kiosks, urban panels, and e-lockers. They're not required. They're all optional. Several material provisions of the RFP, those that received the most remarks, positive remarks from the public, have actually been modified in the latest version of this draft contract. So let me say it again. 3,000 bus shelters, which were required under the contract, are now a goal and are no longer required. Whether you get them or not is dependent on whether the city funds them. If the city doesn't fund them, they will not be provided. Neither are the 450 shade structures that folks have spoken about so glowingly. They're actually optional. There's no guarantee that the bus riders and pedestrians will get them. And many of the other amenities referenced, like hydration stations, hand washing stations, 5G, cooling stations, scooter docks, public Wi-Fi, those are also optional. They're great ideas, but they're not required, and there's no guarantee that any of these amenities will be provided. Now, I just want to briefly, in my closing, address the accusation that we've heard that Alfront & Co. failed to install the promised number of bus shelters and toilets under its current contract. And I just want to clarify this issue for the record. 21 years ago, when the City Council awarded this contract, it had different priorities than it has today. At the time, the City Council focus was on protecting certain neighborhoods from having bus shelters, public toilets, and advertising in their communities. And as a result, every City Council member had veto power over each and every item of street furniture proposed. Every bus shelter, every toilet, every kiosk. And they vetoed many. Bus rider equity was not the city's priority at that time. Neighborhood protection was. That was a City Council decision, not an Alfront & Co. decision. We're thrilled that the priorities have now changed. And just as evidence of our understanding of the importance of shade, I want to note that we committed to offer 1,500 shade structures as part of our proposal, not 450 optional shade structures, a guarantee of 1,500. And we guaranteed 3,000 bus shelters. They're not dependent on city funding. They would be fully funded by us. And we think that if you had received a full comparison of the two proposals, you might have better information on which to make an informed decision. Now, we have a number of other legal concerns. As I said, they're outlined more fully in the letter we submitted, and I'm sure you can read that. In closing, we really just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to address you today, and we hope that we have provided you with some important information that will help you in making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berkowitz and Mr. Wallace. I do appreciate the time that you have taken to be here with us this morning or afternoon now, and I do appreciate every issue you raised as well. Thank you for your time. Transito, do you want to take your right time to do your presentation?
Yes, I appreciate the time. I would love to kind of quickly address a lot of the perhaps misunderstandings that have been brought up, because I think those are very easy to get cleared up. And then I'd like to pass this along to Market Vector to discuss the idea of the revenue, to really kind of clarify what we anticipate for our revenues, especially year one. And then, of course, I'd like to pass it along to our colleagues at Manat to really address any legal concerns you may have. But let me start by just addressing point by point what Mr. Wallace has brought up. This idea that the city is going to divert $237 million to the city when it could get something for free. Now, just really quickly, ourselves, just like JC.co and all the other proposers, did propose multiple options. A free program, or an option that city would pay no CapEx, an option where it'll be a 50-50 joint effort, and an option where the city will provide all of the CapEx. So the city then decided, based upon that, what was the best option for them. I would like to state, and it's interesting that it was brought up, City for Sale, that book. Great book. I think we all understand that there's nothing such as a free program, right? Everything costs something. And in this case, what the cost is a loss of control, right? Because it becomes a concessionaire contract instead of a city-run contract. It's also a loss of revenue share. So, for example, the current program offers the city 20% of revenues, whereas our proposal is actually going to triple that and offer 60.5% revenue share. That's specifically and directly because the cities decide to invest in the CapEx. Not to mention, of course, the ability for the city to really direct us where the shelters will be installed, how many will be installed, what amenities, optional amenities, which was brought up, will be installed. So it really does bring the program back to the city. And that's important because, as we mentioned, for too long the tail has been wagging the dog, right? This is not an advertising program. It's a transportation program. I very much appreciate the perspective that Mr. Wallace has brought up. But again, this is not an advertising contract. It's been that way for too long, and now it's time for a change. I would like to address also this idea that Transito Vector is a new startup. We've heard that in a few correspondence letters, but want to clarify very quickly, Transito is not a startup. We've been operating since 2004. We operate in the major cities and transit agencies throughout California, including in the Bay Area, with the largest transit agencies there, and LA, of course, with Metro and LA DOT. Vector, of course, has been around for over 25 years. So we definitely, with our combined experience, feel like we have exactly what the city's asking for. In fact, the RFP asked for specifically experience in both mobility as well as advertising. So our combined joint venture, to be quite frank, was really the only way to get the expertise that the city asked for. So we're very proud to combine our efforts and really present the city what they asked for specifically in the RFP. The question about a half-built-out system, this kind of potential scenario where, for example, Transito will fail to execute and there'll be a half-built-out system. This is where some of our strategic thinking has come in. Now, actually, what we decided was to do our build-out so that the most highest revenue-generating locations will be built out first with digital assets. This is very important to bring up because what is very big to understand is that although we're committed to 3,450 shelters, to be really candid, only the first 600 to 700 locations are really the ones that are going to generate the most profit. In fact, in our studies, the first year's build-out will generate about 80% of the program revenues over 10 years. So I'll let that sink in, right? We build out the first year's shelters. They're going to be all digital to maximize the revenues and make this program sustainable. Those first year shelters are going to generate 80% of all the program revenues over the next 10 years. So even if this fear comes true to pass and we fail to deliver, those first year installations are going to make sure that this is a highly profitable program for the city. And again, because we're offering 60.5%, that'll be manifested very easily in any financial analysis. I'd also like to address this idea of listening to the experts. Now, we feel like we are the experts in mobility, and we are not experts, of course, in advertising, which is why we partner with Vector Media. That combined expertise, also combined with all of our experts in design, is really what makes our solution, I think, appealing to the city, right? We brought in experts such as Fair & Pierce, which is the top mobility traffic designers in the nation, Black & Veatch, which is the top construction firm in the nation, SOM, DesignWorks, Studio 111. These are all groups that we feel are essential, right? Because again, this is not an advertising program, right? It's a transportation and infrastructure program. So we brought in experts along many disciplines to make sure that this is going to be treated with the sort of expertise that is required to make this successful. I also like to bring up this idea that, the addition to this particular contract changed to up to 3,000 shelters as opposed to 3,000. Now that actually was important because the city wants the flexibility, right? They are paying for the capital. They're also, because of that, able to decide the program. And what is required then, of course, is for the city to have that flexibility. So that change, we feel like, is nothing major, and actually does provide the city additional protections, depending upon what their funding strategy will be moving forward. Now, the optional ideas, as it was brought up, that these are optional, and so it's perhaps bringing upon this idea that these great ideas that we presented are maybe due to previous experience, things to get the job and things that we are going to not deliver on. I think I would like to say that part of our strategy, part of what the RFP asked for, is for a firm like us to bring up innovative ideas. That was one half of the equation. We feel like we brought up many innovative ideas. Again, I'd love
Mr. O, I'm sorry, you were frozen for a while. Not sure if you can kind of maybe 30 seconds, go back 30 seconds on your speech. Thank you.
Sure. I'd like to just bring up this idea of optional ideas, right? Because that was proposed or brought up perhaps to bring up this concern that the ideas that we brought up were, not going to be executed upon. I think it's very important to bring back the idea that the city actually asked to have greater control of this project and wanted to give flexibility and wanted to have the ability to choose which options are most relevant to them and also which are most able to be funded. So what we were asked for in the RFP was actually to bring up these ideas and bring up a strategy to execute upon them, which is what we've done, right? We've brought up many ideas. And in fact, I'm proud to say that a lot of the ideas that we brought up were brought upon from the citizenry. Eli from Move LA brought up the water hydration stations, which we tried our best to incorporate, and we have a plan to allow that strategy to unfold. Many of these strategies, because they're by default innovative, may not come to pass. But that's the part of our job as operators and consultants for the city, is to bring up these strategies, bring up a great way to execute upon them, and present a budget analysis for the city to decide. Again, it's the city's
I just want to, if you can wrap it up, you're getting close to your 15-minute mark as well. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, I'd like to pass it along to Mark Borzakowski from Vector. Talk about the first year revenue expectations. Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute there. So certainly we've heard a lot from incumbent about how the revenue is just unrealistic and compared to what they've generated in the past, and that you should all listen to the experts. I think it's important to keep in mind first that the city did listen to the experts. They hired an expert firm to run the RFP who has experience in multiple municipalities and has really done extensive research into this. Second, I think it's important to not, anyone can try to cherry pick data and create apples and oranges comparisons of why two numbers don't equate. But when incumbent talks about how the revenue projections for the next 10 years are more than the past 10 years, I think it's really important to keep in mind that the program is very different in the next 10 years. There's going to be a lot more advertising panels in the streets, the digital conversion for those high-profile units, by industry standards and by some of the top largest outdoor companies themselves will tell you 3 to 5 times per panel is the revenue increase that you can expect from converting to digital. So,
Borkowitz, if you can also wrap it up, because cumulatively you guys have already kind of gone beyond your time. So we can just make your final statement, please.
So long story short, we're very confident in our projections. We think they're conservative. The city's analyzed them and believes them to be conservative. And we look forward to working with the city.
Thank you. I just want to be fair. I gave you guys a little bit more time. Mr. Wallace and Ms. Berkowitz, is there something you want to add? Just a few minutes of this, just because I know I gave Transito Vector a little bit more time.
We really appreciate your fairness, and we'll be brief. Could somebody, whether it's the council to the committee or Transito Vector, definitively say whether there will be advertising sold in day one on the existing street furniture if we were to exit and they were to take over the staff program?
Noted, Mr. Wallace. Is that your final? Anything else on your end?
Only to say that all of the community speakers who didn't like that the Outfront Deco program didn't get to the high numbers that it was ready to, and Ellen explained that, they're doing it again. And they're doing it again because the city is investing its own money. So, of course, the city wants to be able to cut back on the RFP requirement from 3,000 down to whatever it decides it can afford. And it will decide that, probably, based on what revenue can be produced. I never like...
Agreed.
Everybody tries hard, but you can't say it's not an advertising program, but we're going to pay 60% so the city gets a big return from advertising revenue. There seems to be I'm just going to call it an irony. So with that, I would just hope we would get an answer through the Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace, for your last final statement. I hope both parties feel that they've gotten their fair share of time. And we are now going to turn this over to our commissioners for any questions. However, I do see Shirley Lau and the Streets LA team with Lance have their hand up. So I'm going to call on Shirley Lau now, and then commissioners, I'll call on you for any questions or comments you have. Shirley?
Thank you, Commissioner. We just wanted to clarify that both proposals were evaluated on the fact that they would not be able to advertise an existing furniture from day one. And so the existing contract has options in case we're able to negotiate something later on, but it was assessed and analyzed based upon the fact that they will not be able to advertise on any of the existing street furniture. Just want to make that clarification.
Thank you, Lance. Okay, colleagues, it is 12:33. I will call on any questions and concerns that any of my colleagues have. Commissioners, any questions for any of the parties? I also want to make note that we do have the Office of the CEO here, Chief Administrative Office, so for any questions, and we are open, and everybody's open for any questions that we might have. So thank you for that. Okay, commissioners, I have Dr. Davis, Commissioner Reyes, Vice President Villegas on the queue. So we'll start with Vice President Villegas, Commissioner Davis, and then we'll go with Commissioner Reyes, and we'll continue on that route. Thank you. So Vice President Villegas.
Thank you, and I really appreciate just all the callers that joined us today. Just took notes on those folks that were able to participate. Sorry that you all had to be on for so long, but we really value public opinion. We really value the 200 or so emails that we also received for and opposed this program. We realize that, when we are moving towards change, it's not easy. When we're trying to do something different, it isn't easy. It isn't easy for me either. Just trying to do a different program is also difficult, I would say, for the city as well. And I only say that because, just trying to be able to provide the public with the best benefit is what's key here. Being, a bus rider myself for many, many years throughout my youth and living in disadvantaged communities, I can relate having to just go to school every single day and things like that, and in the rain and in the sunshine. So look, we're trying to create a pleasant experience for our riders every single day, so that we're able to, have people visit Los Angeles and actually, enjoy their experience, or have our existing riders enjoy their experience as well. I just wanted to see if we can have somebody from the CAO's office just to confirm in terms of the process. I appreciated Streets LA just going through that whole process as well, but if they can provide some type of comments in terms of the changes in the process that we approved back in May, and then they reviewed, and then we're back here again. If they can confirm on that process for the record and for transparency, please.
Thank you, Vice President Villegas. We have Nicole Trujillo from the CAO office. Nicole.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Nicole Trujillo with the Office of the CAO. As BSS stated earlier, the contract did not come to our office for review until after the May 11th board approval, and that's consistent with all ED3 reviews. They go to the board first for approval, then they get referred to us. So that's when we started working with Street Services to improve the contract, and Shirley went over the different aspects that we changed. So we feel comfortable now, and if the board chooses to approve this contract, our recommendation will be to approve the contract as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you for stating that for the record. I do want to just address some of the issues that were raised during our public comment. The issue of, and we can have either Streets LA address this, or I think probably Streets LA would be best to address this issue, just on the issue of digital signs and the brightness. If we could have them speak on that, please.
Certainly. Thank you for this opportunity. We've tried to establish illumination standards that are comparable to this, a draft sign ordinance that's been prepared by the Department of City Planning. And so that includes the limitations on the amount of illumination to 4 lux above ambient light. There's also the requirement that the displays also be controllable through a content management system, and that is also another feature of the contract, where we will be able to control each digital screen in real time through that content management system to ensure they are complying with such illumination standards.
Thank you for that. And so when you say something like that, is it on main thoroughfares, or how is that going to be addressed so that we can have a clearer answer on that?
Sure. So the placement of shelters with digital displays are going to be primarily at locations where we have existing shelters, and they're on major corridors that are adjacent to land uses that are commercial and industrial primarily. We've established limitations on, to make sure that the digital displays are compatible with the surroundings, that they're not in locations, again, that are, we're not placing them on local collector streets. We're not putting them next to single-family residential units. And so, again, there's parameters that are written in the contract that control the placement of digital displays.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And then we've heard a lot just on, new technology, hydration stations, the refurbished shelters, and just also the scooter docks. If you can just go through that again for us for clarity, what that entails, and the cost that the city will brunt for which piece?
Sure. So let me start off with the refurbished shelters, or what we call the refresh shelters. And this was actually a provision within the RFP itself. So both proposals were required to consider that capability to refresh shelters. And the concept is to take existing shelters, and rather than dispose of them as we remove them, reuse a certain number of them so that we're able to expand shade and shelter opportunities quicker. It doesn't matter which proposer or which company that we would be working with. It's literally impossible to install 3,000 new shelters in 1 year. And so as we are installing new shelters and replacing old ones, it's a sustainability clause that we implemented in the contract that allows us to reuse existing shelters, move them to a location that presently does not have a shelter, and install that shelter, reinstall that shelter so we have shade and shelter immediately at those locations. Over the course of the rollout period, those refurbished shelters would also be replaced, and so at the end of the rollout period, we would have 3,000 brand new shelters. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. We're not reusing shelters, and we're intending to keep them out there for another 10 years. That is not the intent of the program. Again, all of the features of the program, whether they are scooter docks or hydration stations or e-lockers, shade structures, these are all considered items for the program to fund, and so it's a capital expense that the city would need to develop. It's worked into the capital expense calculations that Transito Vector has presented to us, and so we believe that we can go ahead and build that and have those features and options out there. But again, at this point in time, we don't have all the money secured, and so we are, as Shirley mentioned, pursuing federal grants and loans. And so as those monies become online, we will build up those additional elements, and we believe that we will be able to achieve that within the rollout period of the program itself.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Vice President Villegas, I just wanted to also mention back to your question on illumination. The current ads right now are backlit, and they already have a brightness already, and so I just wanted to make that clear. And also, as part of Transito Vector's proposal, it is 659 shelters that will have digital advertising. So I just wanted to throw a couple facts in there during our discussion, and happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you. I'm almost done. Just wanted to go back just on these existing shelters. Thanks for clarifying that, Lance. So the existing shelters you said are temporary. So how long will they last?
So we anticipate that the longest one might be 3 or 4 years. Again, the total rollout period that we have anticipated right now is a 5-year period for us to build out 3,000 new shelters. That means that we're going to be building and installing on average 600 shelters a year. And again, as we are able to build out the additional new shelters, we'll take out the refreshed shelters, replace it with a brand new shelter, and again, move on forward from there.
Okay. And then are any of those refurbished, temporary shelters, are any of those going to be used for like advertising or anything like that?
No, the proposal, the RFP itself stipulated that the refurbished shelters will be used to display public art. And so that is a feature that actually Transito Vector is going to facilitate for us as they refurbish those shelters.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know we had a lot of banter back and forth on advertising just on existing shelters. So you're saying that the 500 refurbished shelters that we're going to keep in order to start this program running, they will display approved art from our Commission of Arts to be able to be displayed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so then the 659 shelters that will have advertising on it with now, oh my goodness, there's so many things that we have to like consider with low-level lighting or like illumination, and those will be new ones. Are those new that we're going to be purchasing, or are those new that we're going to be going after grant funds, or how are we getting the revenue to generate to build those?
So we actually, luckily, we recently received notice from Metro that we have a $5 million award from the state of California for this program to build out new shelters. And so with that $5 million, we will get going. It was recently awarded. And so we have some of that funding, and we anticipate to build out the ones you just described, Vice President Villegas, the new ones with the digital panels. And so we have those funds as well as $1 million from the budget for this fiscal year, so $6 million. In addition to other efforts to get capital expenditure funds.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you for all of those details. I didn't want to necessarily go into like all of that, but it's better that we just do it so it's on the record. I don't have any other additional questions. President Garcia, thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Villegas, for addressing those questions. I'm going to go with Commissioner Davis for your questions.
Sure. I wanted to get a clarification. We said that the goal of the program is 3,000 shelters, and then we also mentioned 450 shade structures. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you explain to me the difference between shade structures and the shelters?
Certainly. A lot of our bus stops are established at locations where the sidewalk widths are too narrow, or they're hemmed in by driveways or utility poles. And so those physical constraints prevent us from putting a typical, or I'll just say a standard transit shelter out there. And so in those situations where we want to get shade and shelter out the folks, but we don't have that space, we are planning to implement what we call these shade structures. And so the shade structures themselves are smaller versions of a transit shelter. They may have a narrower canopy or a shorter length. Again, this is something that we are going to be developing in conjunction with Transito Vector. And again, it allows us to provide shade and shelter at additional locations where right now, because of those physical constraints, we're unable to do that with a standard shelter.
So that there will be the characteristic of a certain area that would be most appropriate for shade structure as opposed to one of the shelters. Is that correct?
Correct. Based on the physical site conditions, yes, we will use either shade structure or a transit shelter.
In terms of the opportunity to achieve the 3,000 that we are discussing in this proposal, it was mentioned that if we don't have the funding for it, while 3,000 is our vision, may not necessarily happen if we are not able to get the revenues in terms of grant funding and other opportunities for financial resources. And I guess that's true of both the vision for 3,000 shelters as well as the vision for 450 shade structures, correct?
That's correct. One of the things that we talked about in our discussion with the CAO's office is that transit use is changing right now, and we're not sure what the transit use is going to be 10 years from now. As it is right now, we know that Metro is consolidating bus lines, and so there's a reduction in bus stops. But really, the intent of the contract is to achieve the goal of ensuring 75% of bus riders are able to board buses where we have a shade structure. And so that goal is rock solid. It has not changed. Again, I think I may have explained this back on May 11th, but our previous studies of the data out there indicated that if we installed something close to 2,900 new transit shelters, or had a total of 2,900 transit shelters at the busiest bus stops, that we would achieve that 75% goal. And so for the purposes of the RFP, we rounded that up to 3,000 locations, and all the proposers submitted their proposals based upon 3,000 shelters. But should transit use change in the future and we don't require as many transit shelters, or again, we're using data sets that are coming in and changing in daily, we have the flexibility to adjust the program. And so it's not just the revenues, it's also based upon actual usage and rider needs. And again, we will, the goal that we're trying to achieve is ensuring 75% of our bus riding public is able to board where we have a bus shelter located at.
So basically, even though we have a vision of 3,000 shelters and 450 shade structures, we don't really know in terms of the actual implementation of it at this point in time, correct?
That's what we were planning for. And so again, we still, as far as funding goes, those are the funding level, those are the quantity of units that we're trying to seek funding for. But again, if transit pattern changes or some other unknown factor comes up in the future, we have that flexibility to make an adjustments moving forward.
So this contractor, we've done this work before, right? Transito Vector has done this kind of work before. Los Angeles is not the first client, correct?
I'm going to let, for transit shelters, I believe I'd have to rely upon Transito Vector to respond to that.
Okay.
I know that for the Vector side of the company, that they have operated transit shelter programs in other municipalities, not necessarily in Los Angeles.
So in fact, they have other municipalities that they provide this service for, is that correct?
That's correct.
What are some of those places that they are serving?
I'm going to let Gene or Mark from Transito Vector respond to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis, for this question. I'll start off and I'll pass it on to Mark. We actually helped start and initiate the Metro Bike Share program. As a subcontractor to the main contractor, BTS, we were in charge of building out the warehouse and helping to build out the staff and the planning for the hundreds of docks that got stationed in Los Angeles. It's a very similar, of course, sort of environment where we're installing street infrastructure on existing sidewalks. There's obviously many variances. No two sidewalks are the same in LA, so we do have a lot of experience, specifically with Los Angeles and building infrastructure on Los Angeles. I'll pass it on to Mark in regards to specifically bus shelters.
Sure. We have existing contracts with 35 municipalities for transit, bus, and bus amenity contracts. Some of those ongoing contracts are Boston, Chicago, New Orleans, Las Vegas, Orlando, Baltimore. So we have extensive experience. We've been involved in build-outs of shelters as well as advertising sales.
So in terms of the model that we've discussed in this contract, do you implement a similar concept in any of the other cities to which you provide service? For example, you mentioned Boston, you mentioned Baltimore. Do we have similar concepts in terms of a certain vision for both shelters and shade structures that you've had to implement in any of those two municipalities for which you provide service?
So the unique thing about this program and the reason the joint venture came together is because while we have extensive experience selling advertising on all different forms of street furniture. Transito is a specialist in implementing these sort of tech-forward street infrastructure projects. So they'll really be taking the lead on the build-out and the deployment of the technology, while Vector will be focused on the advertising sales.
Sure. So the core value of the contract is to guarantee shelters and shade structures so that the majority of the areas that need it most will have the resources there in terms of shade structures and shelters. That's pretty much the core value of what we're contracting for. Is that correct? Because we are a shelter structure effort primarily, even though we benefit from the secondary effort of being able to sell advertisement. That's not our main priority, as I have understood it from testimony here today, that our main priority was to provide the citizens of Los Angeles shelters and shade structures. Is that correct?
We couldn't say it any better ourselves.
I'll echo that sentiment, Commissioner.
Yes.
You know, the goals that we have stipulated from day one is to provide shade, shelter, safety, and comfort. And that's been a primary goal from our program from day one. One thing I will say is that the business model for this program is something that's fairly unique, at least in the United States, in the sense that the local government agency is actually being the investing partner, so to speak, and building out, paying for the capital expenses for the program. The traditional revenue model based upon advertising is that, as Mr. Wallace had indicated earlier, the company that we're contracting with, takes the risk, takes out the capital expenses, absorbs the capital expenses, pays that back through the advertising, and also shares a certain share of that advertising revenue back with the city. And so in this situation, again, the city is taking a bold step, actually, in trying a new business model where the city actually pays the capital expenses. We own the furniture outright. And the other city that we know that has been successful in doing this particular business model by owning and building out the infrastructure is the city of London in England. And they've been tremendously successful in doing so. We hope to emulate that similar success and provide services moving forward.
When you did the work in areas such as Las Vegas, Baltimore, and Boston, as it relates to fulfilling the vision of shelters and shade structures there, were you able to realize your goals there in any of those cities that you mentioned you worked with?
So to be clear, most of our responsibilities in those cities is the sale of advertising on previously existing shelter structures. There were times, as in Las Vegas, where it was our responsibility to build and deploy digital shelters, not unlike what we're doing here in the Las Vegas market, and we were able to realize what we'd planned to do and successfully sell against it.
How much is the contract here on this particular item that will be implemented by Transito Vector? How much is the contract?
So overall, we have projections right now based upon revenues and the market share for the city of LA. As you may have heard was alluded to previously, over the 10-year period, we anticipate that Transito Vector will be able to generate upwards of $660 million in gross revenue receipts. Of course, that's going to depend upon a lot of different market conditions. And so, we believe that that's a very achievable number based upon the fact that the city of LA is the #2 advertising market in the nation. We are we are only outdone by the city of New York. And so we know that advertisers want to be here, and it really doesn't matter, who our advertising partner is in this particular capacity. We believe that there are going to continue to be a strong desire for national and local folks to be able to advertise here in the city of LA. And so again, we believe that those revenue goals are achievable. And whether it's
how much are we paying Transito Vector for this contract?
So we are paying.
What's the annual? What are we paying initially in this contract? The first year, you anticipate starting when?
We hopefully will start the contract in January 1st, 2023.
And how much is the city? And how much is the city paying?
And in the first year, we anticipate probably expending upwards of $30 to $40 million to start the project out. And to,
Okay, so the city would pay $30 million to start the project out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, here's what my concern is. There is no guarantee that your vision for the 3,000 shelters will actually happen if we don't have the resources. Yet you are responsible for going out to secure the financial resources to be able to construct the shelters as well as the shade structures. Is that correct?
That's correct.
With the $30 million, what will that allow you to do?
So we anticipate that that'll allow us to build out the majority of the digital shelters that we desire to have in place in the first year. One of the things that we were, as we are pursuing this contract, we of course were also pursuing in parallel conversations to seek out different sources of funding to pursue for the capital expense. And a lot of the discussions that we've had with other leaders within the city is that upon award of the contract, the city will then provide direction to further find further means of funding the capital expense for the contract. So that's why the efforts to date so far have primarily existed on Streets LA. What we've been able to achieve basically in talking to partners like Metro, talking to partners in LA DOT, and other similar situations, as well as within the department itself, to start the project off. And again, we are confident that once the contract is executed, city leadership will provide us with a mechanism at least to move forward with funding needed to build the program out.
And you have said that 60% of the revenues that you are able to generate will be reinvested back in the city.
They'll be returned to the city in the form of revenue. So, on every dollar that Transito Vector is able to earn, the city will get 60.5 cents back, which again presents a significant increase in the revenue aspect as far as what the program is able to provide to the city.
Okay, I have two final concerns. Bus rider equity is a concept that city leadership has focused on as it relates to this project. When we look at the implementation of shelters and shade structures, is there a plan that you have that centers around bus rider equity as it relates to shelters and structures?
Most definitely, and as I mentioned during previously, is that we actually have a GIS-based system where we have mapped out all bus stops. We know we have assigned values such as ridership information to each of those bus stops. We've assigned data such as heat exposure, equity-focused community, data to ensure that we are prioritizing those locations for the where we want to put our new bus shelters. So, again, that is how we plan to achieve that equity-based system and distribution of shelters.
So would it be safe to say that your vision is that you will begin to implement the implementations of shelters and structures in those areas that need it most? Would that be fair to say?
Yes, to a certain extent. Again, in the first year, we need to actually place digital shelters out there to generate the revenues that will help us to prime the pump, so to speak, and sustain the program financially moving forward. Once we are able to achieve those revenues, that'll also allow us to pay back any debt that we have. It'll allow us to build out the additional shelters that we require for the areas that need it most.
My final question then, $30 million to start out, and subsequent annual revenues the city would pay probably would be similar to subsequent years that this contract would be able to bind the city to supporting the work that Transito Vector is going to do. So with that, as it looks at equity, to what degree is business inclusion or other opportunities for businesses in the area are able to be involved and inculcated in the project that we're doing here?
besides the city service worker retention ordinance, which is a key component of the contract itself, the program itself is actually is much more affable and connected to the local community in the sense that just on the advertising perspective, the digital allows us to make that type of service available to a wider range of businesses in all communities. And the company itself, again, has completed their business inclusion plan. They've employed their, they've listed their subcontractors that come from the minority and women-owned businesses and the other categories that are part of that business inclusion program that the city pursues. And so, again, we feel confident that Transito Vector will be able to, not only for their own business, but in the operations of the program itself, be able to achieve that equity that we're looking for.
So the funding for this contract is local funds. There's no state and federal dollars involved in the contract.
Actually, Commissioner, we did get a $5 million state award, and I'm also waiting eagerly for a $1 million federal award for shade structures specifically. Also, we're working with Metro on future Federal Transit Administration's bus facilities programs. That program, they're part of the infrastructure bill, and I think going in with Metro, who's our transit agency, we're really hopeful that we get much larger awards for the capital expenditure of this contract.
Great.
And, yeah.
So as we look at a combination of funding, it means that we have to be very diverse and dynamic, not only in the service that we are providing, but in the opportunity to be able to have people participate in the service that we are providing to the extent possible, particularly when we start getting state and more specifically federal dollars. At the rate that we are investing in this, it would be great if at some point in time we can include others in the work as well. So thank you so very much, and I appreciate your answering my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Davis. I'm going to go now with Commissioner Reyes.
I'll try to be brief because of the time. I have one question and then a few comments. And I think this question is for Lance. You mentioned about, and this is to address a majority of the issues that we received about the illumination, the brightness issue, and you kind of mentioned that our standard is comparable with the draft sign ordinance. Is that sign ordinance in draft, or has that been amended, or I'm sorry, adopted? Is it still in the draft form? And if so, if there are any changes, because I'm really interested in just one standard of, a brightness, and if we can address that. And if there is any change of that, I would assume that this contract will comport with whatever that final ordinance once it's become final. Is what I'm assuming correct?
That's correct.
I want to put it on record.
And also probably Ted Jordan can answer that too as well. Sorry, Lance, go ahead first, then I'll ask Ted Jordan to clarify and confirm that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, the draft ordinance is just that. It's a draft for the sign ordinance. It's been something that the planning department has been working on for a number of years. My understanding is that the planning commission actually adopted a version of that, but the city council has not taken an action on it yet, and so it's not been adopted yet. That being said, there's language that has been pretty consistent in the draft sign ordinance as far as the illumination of signage, both digital and static. And so, to the extent that something changes or the ordinance actually gets adopted in the future, we believe that it'd be very, very easy for us to adopt to those similar standards to ensure that we're consistent with the sign ordinance if and when it's approved.
Ed?
Yeah, I think Lance covered it. What's been referred to here as the sign ordinance or the draft sign ordinance is an ordinance that was approved by the city's planning commission. Has not yet been adopted to the city council by the city council. Unclear if it will be adopted by the city council. The city does already have a sign ordinance that's in the code. this ordinance that we're talking about that the City Planning Commission approved, I believe would replace that. The city's existing sign ordinance talks about off-site signs, billboards, and things like that, does not apply to what goes on in the public right-of-way. There is a different ordinance that applies to the public right-of-way, and that's an ordinance that is very, very different. It doesn't deal with luminosity or anything like that, and it's currently there's a amendment to that ordinance pending before the City Council, and it was evaluated under the MND. But none of that stuff is before you. It was sort of at the prior meeting.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. The other question I have is also echoing what President Pro Tem Davis said about the business inclusion, is the ability of this contract, if approved, to kind of carve out something for community level contracting opportunities, and is that and for us to be mindful in terms of the small and diverse businesses, to be able to allow them to compete and also take an opportunity to partake of the benefits of this contract is something that I personally am very interested in making sure that it happens, because it is a huge contract and there are humongous opportunities for carving out some for our small and diverse businesses. So I would like just to put that out there, that we should be looking at those should this contract be approved. And then the third one is on the regional, sort of like an outlook, because we're concerned about funding. We should really look at regional funding, whether it's state or federal dollars. I know the infrastructure plan of the White House is in play. We should be following that closely because these are projects, right, that will impact in terms of equity for our neighborhoods and our communities, that will also help us inform in our decision making, look at the geographic based disparities that we have with equity in mind. And at the same time, when we talk about revenue, it's not just about the revenue that we should be concerned. It's just really for public access to bus shelters in terms of the climate change that we have right now, along ability for our public, especially those along high ridership routes, to provide them the adequate protection, the shelter. They are valuable community assets, as I see them, for these bus shelters, that we should be able to really learn from our past experience and improve that customer experience for their ridership. I also want to really have all of us look at it from a sense that we need to be more transparent, that we need to communicate with our stakeholders in time, because we are working for greater transparency. We are looking at capacity building opportunities whenever we have huge contracts and more equitable outcomes. I just want to put it out there that whatever the contract is, we should always be looking for that transparency piece, that capacity building opportunity, and the equitable outcome for each and every contract that we have. So thank you for this opportunity. And remember, we are going to have the Olympics pretty soon. So these bus shelters, it's going to be a huge opportunity for the city of LA to showcase what we have for the public at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reyes. I appreciate your questions and comments there. I'm gonna go now with Commissioner Corson. Commissioner Corson?
Thank you. I do appreciate the public comment, the letters that came in, the presentation, and just so the public knows where I stand on this is we have already taken this up. We've already addressed a lot of the issues that were raised, and we voted to approve the contract then. The changes made now are some changes, but it doesn't change the broad scope of what our objectives were when we approved it, and I am not against what is before us. But largely speaking, I wanted to address something Commissioner Reyes just brought up. We don't live in an ideal world where there are no conflicts between bureaus and departments in the city. Within our own bureaus, BOE and Streets LA and Urban Forestry run into issues with public right-of-way and private right-of-way streets and sidewalk dedications and waivers. That's the world we live in. Public and right-of-way and private right-of-way often collide. And I was vice president of the Citywide Planning Commission, and I'm very familiar with the digital sign ordinance and the sign ordinance itself. And we heard from my former colleague, Renee Dake Wilson, speak to it as well. They were there first. That language that is being already applied, I'm not talking about the metrics, but the words itself, as Commissioner Dake Wilson mentioned, of Lux and Candelas, they were there first, and Commissioner Reyes, so while that sign ordinance may never be approved, we are having sign ordinances being applied to projects that have digital signs. And so once again, what we're saying is, well, we're going to get this one to the finish line first, so we're going to have two different definitions of how to apply digital signs across the city. That's the real crux of that issue. I do have a question because I'm a little, I want some clarity on what was mentioned at the beginning of this item. And I believe Vice President Villegas had also brought it up in some clarity on the process. What is happening next? So we approve this. What is the next step? Are there any further changes that the CAO is going to recommend? What happens if council changes our recommendations? Does that come back to us as the Board of Public Works? Does that go to the CAO's office before it comes back to us, or do we not get it? Can council just make any changes they deem worthy? And in terms of the MND, since we already took action on that, and that goes to council, can they open the MND and make changes? I just want some clarity on what the process is now, and in case this has to come back to us again in 3 months, we have a little bit of a heads up now. So I don't know if we should answer that.
I think Shirley, and then also I would also appreciate Ted Jordan if provide some clarity as well. So Shirley and Lance go first, and then Ted Jordan. Sorry.
Okay. So thank you, Commissioner, for that question. So our understanding is that should the board approve this report today, or the actions today be approved, then the CAO will release their report, the ED3 report, to the mayor's office. Just for clarification, the Bureau of Street Services, we have not seen the report. We only have been in just discussions with the CAO's office in the last few months. So we have not gotten a copy of that report. That report will be going to the mayor for the mayor to approve. And subsequently, if it's approved, then it'll be uploaded along with the other items that were in the May 11th Board of Public Works approval, which includes the CEQA. And all of those items will be including today's revised contract, should it be approved today. Those will all be agendized for the possibly August 24th Public Works Committee for their consideration. So maybe I should let Ted speak on any clarifications of what I just said.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Should the board choose to approve the contract before it, the next approval that's needed is the mayor's approval under Executive Directive 3. Of course, we approved something in May, and it went to the mayor. The CAO is an integral part of that process. They review the contracts on behalf of the mayor, and they typically write a report that recommends the mayor approve it or disapprove it. In this case, just given the complexity of the contract and what we're doing here, the CAO felt it was important to make some recommended changes, and we've talked about all of that. The CAO's representative here has indicated that should the board approve the contract that is now before it, the CAO is prepared to make its recommendation to the mayor's office to approve the contract. That's sort of the first immediate step. The next step is the mayor's office will transmit the contract to the city council. There at the council already is the CEQA document, the MND, and everything that goes with that, along with a proposed ordinance that my office has transmitted some time ago. It's necessary to just put all of the pieces in place. The city council then takes up this item. The city council has to approve the contract because the city's administrative code 10.5 requires that. City council by that code is not empowered to make any changes to the contract. It is literally an up or down vote. The city council does need to approve the CEQA document because its decision on the contract has to be informed by the environmental issues. So the next step after the mayor's approval transmits to the city council. The city council then takes up the MND and the contract. City council is not empowered to make changes to the contract. They can reject the contract. They can say we don't want it. They can tell the board why they don't want it. They can tell the board, gosh, we think you should make some changes, but they can't make any changes to the contract. The MND that's before it, they can approve that. Changes to an MND document, that's a CEQA process, and it may ultimately, depending on the nature of the change, require addenda to be made, or in significant changes, recirculation. So they really just give those documents an up or down vote too. I hope that provides the clarification, and I'm happy to try to explain it further.
No, that was good. Thank you. I have no further questions, President Garcia.
Thank you, Commissioner Corson, for that. Commissioner Reyes, your hand's up again. Do you want to ask further questions? Okay, got it. No problem. All right. I have a couple of questions myself, and just for clarity, and then some kind of recommendations as well that I want to put forward. One of my questions, Shirley, can you clarify with the $5 million state grant that you have received now, or have gotten the award that you will be receiving, what will that cover? And more specifically, about how many shade structures will that cover?
Yeah, so that is a state grant that we collaborated with Metro on a grant opportunity. So we intend to use that $5 million to actually build the transit shelters. Shade structures, we actually do have some funding in the budget already. However, I also am eagerly waiting another $1 to $1.5 million federal grant for shade structures. So with the $5 million from the state grant, we hope to get 100 or a little over 100 transit shelters. And the shade structures, we'll see if we get the grant. We're very hopeful because it was actually a federal earmark that was recommended. And so we will hear back later in the fall.
Okay, so that with the $5 million plus the $5 million grant plus the $1 million grant, we intend to pay for our transit shelters and some shade structures that we already have that will then be city owned, and therefore we will not have to take out funding from the general fund, from the city's general fund.
Correct.
Okay.
And I want to, I'm sorry, Garcia, I just want to clarify that, for all of these grants, state grants, federal grants, they can only be reimbursed to an agency like the city or Metro. It cannot be reimbursed to a third party like a vendor or contractor. So I think given that it is a 100% CapEx scenario where we're going after, these grants will be reimbursed to the city. And seeking these grants, it's much easier if they know we own it, and Metro is fully on board with our efforts. And I think just jointly, we feel very confident in future competitive grants coming forward.
Thank you, Shirley, for that. And I know there's a couple of more investments coming for infrastructure. Perhaps we can continue applying for shade structures throughout the city. So one of the goals that I know I would love to have and see throughout the city is shade structures in every single bus stop throughout the city, because we need it, whether rain or heat. We need folks to be covered, feel safe while they're waiting for the buses, especially for folks that are waiting at very early dawn hours or very late hours of the day. So I just want to make sure that as a goal or a vision for upcoming years is that we want to make sure every bus stop has a shade structure. We're on our way there, I get it, but we're not quite there, making sure that that becomes a reality. So just putting more work for, 10 plus years here, Shirley, but I just want to make sure that we do put that into our vision, that eventually I want to make sure every bus stop has shade structure. Every bus stop deserves it, by the way.
Yes.
Give me a second. What about the current bus shelters that do not have shade structure? Shirley, how are we going to address those?
I might need to, are you saying the current bus shelters, that the bus stops that only have a sign without
That only have a sign, or perhaps only have one of those cement type of bus bench? Yeah. What is our projected vision for those type of structures?
So again, we hope to install an additional 1,200 new shelters, more or less. And so to get us up to that 3,000, right now we have a little over 1,800 transit shelters on the street right now. And so by reaching that 3,000 goal, we will build out another 1,150 to 1,200 new transit shelters at all new brand new locations. And again, we're using these priorities based upon bus ridership and heat and equity-focused communities to help us determine where those new bus shelters need to be at, so that they're going to be able to service the greatest need for our transit riders out there.
And President Garcia, just to make you aware, you know that I'm on the kind of a grants task force, and I communicate frequently with all the other departments, DOT and DOE, on all of our active transportation grant projects that we just recently submitted. We submitted over $300 million worth of projects, and throughout the city, the groups working on advancing active transportation, everyone knows that when they go out to seek grants, we need to be able to fit in funding for our STAP program. And so that will supplement also the capital expenditure. And so in working with everyone from Mayor's Office, DOT, everyone, and BOE, we all know that this program is moving forward, and we want to be able to make that investment. And so I just wanted to let you know that that effort is going on.
Thank you, Shirley, for that clarification. I do appreciate that because, like I said, I think our vision and our goal as stewards of the city or public right-of-way areas is to provide the riders a safe experience, but also a good experience while they're waiting for the bus. So I just want to make sure that our overall vision is to eventually get to every single bus stop to have a shade structure. Not, I know there's a lot of talk about the secondary elements and then also additional elements that are really, if you read them, they're really like hydration stations, scooter docks, public Wi-Fi. All of those are great amenities to what we need, but if basics is just shade, that should just be a basic structure for every bus stop. Everything else I appreciate, and I want to make sure that becomes a reality as we move into this, the smart city, and so we move into those types of elements. But I just want to make sure that it is very clear to everybody in this call that shade structure should be an equitable piece throughout the whole city. So a couple more, and then I'll turn it back up to any of my colleagues if they want to ask additional questions or make additional comments. So I see that there was a lot of discussion about digital panels and the advertising and the revenue. And again, I want to echo my colleague's sentiment on this. That's great. We're going to do that. But I think first and foremost is the equitable, and we want to make, again, the bus shelters to everybody and make the ridership a good experience. How will you work with Metro on making sure when bus routes or buses are running late that the rider will be notified or will know? How is that going to happen? Have you guys vet that out yet?
Yes, so we've been in discussions with Metro. Of course, Metro is just one of 26 major transit operators here within the city. But they're the 800-pound gorilla for sure. But we have been talking with their bus planning team as well as their bus stops and zones team. And I must say that within the last 3 to 4 years, especially as we pursue this effort to map out all the bus stops, that we have never been more in close contact and in a better place to coordinate our efforts with Metro than we have in the last couple of years. And the people that are there right now have been fantastic to work with. We plan to continue that relationship. And again, as they have to adjust stops or move stops, we'll do the same. We'll be able to make those adjustments in the program and get that word out to our transit riding public through our public service announcement capabilities and our data, that we're able to do on our new shelters. We're also in conversation with, our LA DOT runs its own bus systems as well. And Santa Monica Big Blue Bus runs buses. And so, again, to the extent that we are able to coordinate with the other transit operators, we'll do the same with those as well.
I appreciate that, because if we're gonna, spend money on putting digital advertisement, I want to make sure that it's useful, informative to the public, that it's not just based on commercials that's going to generate funding, but that it's actually an asset to the community and to the public riders. So Jean, I'm looking at you right now to make sure, to put that on your hat, to make sure that that does happen as we move forward. And I'm saying that now because I want to make sure that that's part of what we are looking at as a big, greater vision of that. So I want to make sure those digital panels are useful, knowledgeable, informative, and that our first focus is not generating money, but our first focus is providing a public safety ridership program. And that means a safe program for everybody with knowledgeable, up-to-date knowledge. And so Bureau of Street Services, there might have to be a factor where there's a coordination effort to make sure that either through Transito or through BSS, to make sure that we're always up to date with any closures or bus routes that are being changed or timing has been moved around. Very important for working folks to know that.
And President Garcia, I just wanted to add, Lance mentioned we coordinate with Metro and DOT, and I just want to clarify that, they were all part of our evaluation team. Streets LA did not do this alone. We're not selecting the proposers on our own. So it was a joint effort. Many city departments, as well as our transit agencies, were involved in the selection of Transito Vector. And it was by no means there was no bias or anything on the incumbent. It was just purely looking at the best and final offer, and based on the technical proposal and based on the price proposal that both companies submitted. So I just want to kind of clarify that. I know there's been a lot of discussions about the Bureau, but we didn't do this in a silo, and we do have partners out there who really want to also, they have their other items, which is like mobility hubs, and Metro has their initiatives to make transit stops safer. So we're on this together, and we did collectively evaluate this contract. So thank you.
Thank you, Shirley, for that clarification. I appreciate that. But given that this contract came to us back again to our board, I want to make sure that we address some of the items that we probably did not address last time, and want to make sure that we're clear on the board who has the authority of this contract, what we are expecting to see out of the contract. So I just want to make sure that that vision is clear to everyone here, what we want to see moving forward. So on that end, I have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to be done with what I want to say. There's been, again, a lot of talk about the revenue and the money that's coming, or the digital panel advertising. But I also want to make a recommendation and something that you all need to put on your radar hat. And if you have not, please do so now. You will install digital panels in all over the city, and perhaps in low-income community areas, or probably as an Equitable you should, in areas that are that have businesses and so forth. I want to make sure that there is a program carved out that local small businesses can advertise in your panels at a lower cost rate, or even free, especially if you're in a low-income community and it's a low-income type of business, but it's right next to the bus shelter, right in the same street as the bus shelter, right across the street from the bus shelter. I want to make sure that those companies, small businesses, whatever it is, have a discount rate, a free rate, or anything that they can do to make sure that those businesses are advertised in a way that's equitable and their integrity is always taken care of. Did I make sense on that? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I can assure you that actually within the contract itself, there are different rate structures built into the program that will do exactly what you described, that will enable local businesses to be able to advertise. Right now, again, maybe it's cost prohibitive for those folks because, we have to do printed materials and all that other good stuff, but the digital really provides that opportunity to, for small businesses to get their foot into that market and to do that type of display work. We also have different rates worked into the contract for nonprofits. So if nonprofits want to utilize our public service announcement capabilities, they're able to do so at a discounted rate. And so that, again, opens up the advertising opportunities to a much larger market. And as Transito Vector had mentioned before, that is one of the ways that they plan to grow the business, quite frankly.
Thank you, Terence, for that clarification on your end. And I just have a question, and this might be a Transito question mostly. Will this contract create jobs? And do you have an idea how many? And my last request would be also to always be considerate of our City of LA residents, since these bus shelters will be placed in City of LA property.
Yes, President Garcia, I appreciate that, and I will assure you that as as a transit advocate for the last 20 years, there's nothing I want more than to increase equity and help the environment with this program. In regards to jobs, we actually have been very specific about finding the right partners that will not only be qualified for their positions, but also provide the equity that we're looking for. So, for example, our team, AP Construction, they're actually the team that will be installing or doing the site work and construction for these projects. They've actually been responsible for installing hundreds of bus shelters for Metro. So they have the requisite experience, but also they recently graduated from the SBE and DBE program. So it's a success story of both of those programs kind of graduating onward. So that's the kind of firm that we're going to hire. They absolutely are looking for local hires and great entry-level jobs in the construction field. Mark can probably address, our real particular interest in having local sales reps as well.
Agreed. Thank you. Mark?
Sure. So from the local sales side, in all of the markets where we operate, we really focus on a neighborhood-based sales team. So our feeling is for local businesses, people who are from the communities and are servicing the communities that they live in and know best, really do make the best representatives and best extension to the local community. So what we're going to do is we'll be hiring, within each area and within each district, local talent to be able to actually sell to the local businesses in those areas.
Okay, good. Thank you. I just want to make sure that we keep that that sentiment and that agreement forward throughout the entire length of the contract or the entire life of the contract. I know there's going to be a lot of good marketing exposure time in the City of LA, and plus we're the City of LA, so as just being the City of LA, we are a good market place to always advertise. But there's a lot of good things that are coming, like the LA 2028 Olympics, the FIFA Cup, and I think we have a couple other big sporting events like that, and also conventions type of deal. I just want to make sure that we always keep the forefront that we're talking about here today, which is being equitable and making sure that our folks that are around our bus shelters receive also the integrity that these big players would receive. So I want to make sure that that's something that you guys always work with. Along that, and I'll close with this, because this has been such a scrutinized contract, and we've kind of were able to provide more feedback and more eyes on it now. So thank you to the CAO office. I do want to thank you publicly, Nicole Trujillo, Shafia, and David Hirano for your time and your efforts and for really going. I went on mute there. I just want to say thank you, Nicole, and your team for doing that and going through such a big contract that we have in front of us. Having said that, because this is such a scrutinized contract, I would like to have quarterly updates of where we're at in implementing this contract. I want to make sure that this board has oversight not only of where we're implementing and installing shade structures, but I also want to make sure that to be a fair a partner, that we are both reaching our milestones. Us as the city and you as the contractor. So therefore, I know that this contract will come in place in January of 2023. I would expect that the first board report would be March of 2023. And it doesn't. I want to hear milestones. I want to hear where we're at. And that if at any point we are able to help and support anything, I'm more than happy to do it. Because at the end of the day, what we want as stewards of this city is that we provide the best and maximize our resources for our residents of the city of LA. So with that, I will end my comments and my questions on this. On today's hearing on this. Are there any other questions, comments from our commissioners that they would like to share? Commissioner Reyes.
I completely forgot to mention, and I'll be remiss in being the sustainability guru, is to add to the fact that somebody mentioned about the usage of electricity. I believe, and Lance, you can confirm with me that there is the potential to install solar battery components to this contract that will help offset or offload peak hour usage. Is that correct? Because I know that the council member Mitch O'Farrell, I think, added this component during the RFP process. Is that still there?
That's correct. We've been in discussions with Water and Power. They are trying to get us the specifications for any type of storage unit they may want us to try to implement. But that being said, I believe that the BAFO that was submitted by Transito Vector stipulated that over 1,000 of our shelters would be solar powered completely. So it would be something that is off the grid, would not require any type of power whatsoever, but it would still be able to provide the services and features that we spoke about earlier. So that in and of itself is a quantitative leap ahead for us from a sustainability perspective.
Very good. Thank you so much.
All right. Any last final thoughts, concerns, comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, President, for identifying some of the issues and core values of the board as it relates to diversity and inclusion, and making sure that we take what we're doing in this work and, to the extent possible, have some inclusion of the community in helping to build it. So I agree with that 100%, and I think that that is the road to which we must move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Appreciate that as well. I don't see any comments, questions, or concerns. I just want to remind what we're here doing today. We are reconsidering and approving the revised contract for the staff with Transito Vector, previously approved by the Board of Public Works on May 11th. And we authorize the president or two members of the Board of Public Works to execute the revised contract with Transito Vector upon approval by the Los Angeles City Council and Mayor, including all applicable CEQA actions. That is what we're here. That is what is on the table. Is there a motion on the table to move this item forward and forthwith?
So move.
Thank you, Commissioner Reyes. I will second that. Are there any objections, commissioners? Hearing none. Dr. Campos, there's a first by Commissioner Reyes and a second by me to move item number 2 forward and forthwith.
Absolutely. We'll start the voting tabulation now. We'll start with you, President Garcia.
Aye.
Vice President Villegas.
Aye.
President Pro Tem Davis.
Davis, aye.
Commissioner Corzan.
Aye.
And Commissioner Reyes.
Aye.
This motion is adopted and carries unanimous. We will forward this report to our Honorable Mayor and then to our City Council. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We hope not to see the contract again in our board, but we do expect and want to hear your milestones. So thank you, everybody, for your time and effort, everybody that was involved. and that will be involved in this contract. Thank you. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to the city of LA residents.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Campos, have we cleared the desk for today?
Yes, you have.
Great. Thank you, everyone. It is now 1:42 p.m., August 17, and this meeting is officially adjourned.
Thank you.